are now live with some Earthlock. Hello, everyone. We've got Professor Palmer doing any percent of this game. And without further ado, I will let him take it away.
Alrighty, cool. Appreciate you, man.
Yeah,
Well, we have plenty of time to explain as we go, so I'll go ahead and get started, and we'll do some explaining from there. So I'll count you down if you're ready.
Yep, I'm all ready to go.
All right, cool. So in 3, 2, 1, go. So this is Earthlock. It's got an interesting backstory. So it was developed by an indie company called Snowcastle, and they're cool people. But the game actually came out in 2016 under the title Earthlock Festival of Magic. And the Festival of Magic was a Kickstarter campaign. They put it together, and a pretty decent result came from it. However, Snowcastle kind of thought about it for a little bit, and before they moved on to their second game, they wanted to make sure that they made better what they already had. So they, over the course of 2017 and a little bit of 2018, they remastered Earthlock into the Festival of Magic into just regular Earthlock, which is the version I'm playing on now. And this version features like a whole bunch of quality changes. It's practically an entirely different game. There's so many more storyline elements that were cleared up, more story as a whole. As you can see, I'm using this functionality that increases battle by double. So animations and just battles in general, they go so much faster, and you can toggle that with R2. So if you want to utilize it, it's something that you can do, and if you don't, then you don't have to. And I really like that, especially the faster battle option. And the reason for it is like I can't say how many turn-based RPGs I've played, and like I love turn-based RPGs. Don't get me wrong, but there's a lot of times when animations and battles and things like that can drag on or go really slowly and feel kind of redundant. So to give people the option to kind of just speed things up is really nice. On top of that, in the speedrun sense, it obviously makes a whole lot of sense. It's really favorable that we have the opportunity to do that. And it makes a lot of fights in this game go super fast. So you can, because there's a turn order on the far right side of the battle screen, you can actually see who's going in what order and start mashing the corresponding buttons that you'll need in order to throw out whatever ability you're going to throw out next. So as a result, you can just burn through fights. And you can look at your next turn like 2 or 3 turns ahead of time and know exactly what you're going to do and play very reactionary, almost like a kind of a fast-paced chess game. And I really like that about this game and the speedrun as a whole. It's super high risk, super high reward, and a lot of really interesting shenanigans can come of it. You can die in some pretty funny places, but you can also, like some of the hardest fights in the game, you can burn through in under a minute if you have a really good plan going into it and know exactly what you're going to do. You have to play pretty reactionary, but I really prefer games that require you to play in that fashion. So this is a speed game that I was really excited to pick up and route and get going. And actually, it got into RPG Limit Break this year, so we are going to be doing a lot more Earthlock come May, and I'm excited to be at this marathon, being able to show it off as well. But just to kind of explain where we're at story-wise, this is the character I'm controlling right now. Is technically the main character in the game. His name is Eamon, and he's a scavenger. Him and his uncle, the hammerhead shark-looking guy, they're scavengers. Basically, what they do is they go around and find loot and treasure and ruins and things like that, and they sell it, and that's how they make their living. But the reason that they can do that in the first place is because a long time ago, there was a war between these very ancient, very powerful beings that the fallout from the war, the destruction that it caused, forced the Earth to be locked in place. Hence the name of the game. So the Earth stopped spinning, essentially, and as a result, half of the world is exposed to like really, really intense heat. So you got lots of deserts and dry landscapes like that, and then the other half exposed to like immense cold. Also a lot of frozen areas in winter and whatnot. And the actual like aesthetics of a lot of the terrain and the areas and things like that are really interesting when you know that fact about the story and everything. There's a lot of really cool looking places that we'll traverse, even though we only do it for a little bit of time. But so cut to Eamon here. We're solving some puzzles. Now there's a handful of puzzles in this game in every dungeon for the most part. The puzzles in this game though are not at all difficult or over complex. Like they do require a little bit of thinking and some playing around with to figure out your first time through. But they're kind of simplified. They're not going to, have you sitting there for hours trying to figure out exactly how to lay every piece in a row and figure it out, which is nice, because I can't tell you how many games I've played where the puzzles, I was like, I suck at puzzles, first of all, and I just really, it's easy to make puzzles too difficult in an attempt to make them hella interesting. And as a result, it ends up being boring to me, or something that I'm like, you know what? It's just not worth doing. It's redundant. It's mundane, and I just don't want to keep doing it over and over. Well, this game does a good job of kind of riding that fine line where it's like, here's some puzzles to entertain you. They're usually pretty short, pretty quick. None of them are super complex. The Tower of Dur, a little bit later on, is requires a little bit of thinking and figuring it all out, but They did a really good job in not being too overbearing on the puzzles. So we'll be doing a handful of them, but none of them will take us longer than a couple minutes max. This actually is one of the longer ones in the game, just because we don't have a fast character yet. But we're after this artifact that this guy right here, the Temple Guardian, is protecting, and this is going to be our first fight in the game. So again, I'm going to use the fast battle speed. I'm going to use it every single fight in the game, no exceptions. As you kind of get used to running the game, you'll have no problem with the battle speed. And even if you're going to take your time and figure out the fight slowly, it's still nice to have the animations be quick. So that is our first fight in the game, a rather easy one. You can do it obviously at the low level that you start at. However, because this game's max level is only level 20, the difficulty curve in this game is really severe. So from one boss to the next, you can go from just plowing through it, mowing over it, and then in the very next one you get completely demolished. It's crazy. And I know that when Snowcastle, or at least I would have to imagine, when Snowcastle designed the game with such a low level cap and such a high difficulty curve, that they wanted to kind of incentivize people to go out and fight things and take all the fights you get, don't run away from them, and get EXP. Now, as a result, they also, or in order to kind of help you out in that respect, they have a really interesting EXP system in this game. The EXP is multiplied based on the amount of enemies you fight, and you can kind of dictate how many enemies you're going to fight in a specific fight. There's no random encounters. As we go through the next area, I'll kind of explain how you deal with encounters a little bit in more depth. But essentially, for any fight that has more than the amount of characters you have in your party, you're going to get a flat EXP bonus of being outnumbered. And on top of that, every enemy more than one receives a multiplier. 8 is the most enemies you can take in a single battle, and as a result ends up being the most amount of EXP you can get. So if you're really risky, or you have a pretty good game plan, you can actually farm, not farm or grind, but you can gather up a bunch of enemies and kill them for a ton of EXP. And that's what we'll be doing a lot. The EXP in this route is actually pretty strict. I'll be taking a handful of fights throughout the game, and each and every single one of those fights is done completely on purpose. If you don't see me feign death, which is to run away, then it was definitely a purposeful fight to take. I take very specific fights in a very specific order with a specific amount of enemies that make up that fight in order to math out the EXP the best I can. And it should put us in it should almost always put us in the exact same spot towards the end of the game. Now, there are things that can kind of throw a wrench into that, like if a character dies and doesn't receive EXP in some fights, and you kind of have to be mindful of that. There's a few different sections where you can fix that if you do happen to screw it up, and we'll be, let me save real quick, just in case of soft locks or anything, and we will be hopefully not having to utilize any of that, but if we do, I have a whole bunch of of places where I can make up EXP that I've missed and things like that. So we've obtained Nart, which there is a donation incentive for. If you guys are interested in donating, it's for a good cause. So Nart later on will be giving the opportunity to wear an alternate skin, which is like just a purely visual thing, but it looks pretty cool. But he is, until we get a little bit later in the game and get a different character, he's going to be the person that we use to move about the world map. Every character in the game has like a unique property when they're out of battle that they can utilize. Eamon can scavenge from these scrap heaps that you see scattered throughout everywhere. Nart can interact with plants on the world map, and that's what I'm doing right here. There's two types of plants, one that heal you and one, the speedy bean, that makes you run faster. So we'll be picking up speedy beans scattered throughout places because the increase to our speed makes up for and then some, as opposed to just running outright. So Nart, until about, I don't know, 2 hours in, we won't be using anybody besides Nart to at least to run around. Now when you're in dungeons, you won't have that opportunity, so we'll use just whoever. It doesn't really matter. But basically, Eamon, he went to go sell the relic that they just picked up, the artifact from the temple. And when he was doing so, Nart approached him and said, "Hey, you don't realize what you have. This vendor here is not going to be able to give you as much money as that item is worth." And Eamon, not realizing or knowing how much it was worth, he said, "Okay, well, what can you give me?" And he said, "Well, let me, I work for a historical society, people that catalog and protect these kinds of ancient relics and artifacts and things like that, like historians. And we can pay you what it's actually worth, so long as you accompany me and take me back to the city that society is located in, which is Suvia." He's like, "Because I can't get there on my own. I'm a terrible fighter, and we'll help each other out if you can get me there." So he says, "All right, we'll do it. And you have to make a pit stop first." Nart says that there's somebody who also works for the House of the High Owl, which is the historical society. And she is in the swamp, not too far from here, so let's go stop. I need to have a conversation with her first, and then as soon as I do, we can move on. So we meet Olia. She's basically like a warrior of that same House of the High Owl as Nart is. They send her out on missions, essentially, whereas Nart is more of like an information guy. And we go to meet her, and she says that somebody that she's here to rescue needs help. So until we can continue, we have to go rescue the frog boy. And it's very important that we do, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Oops. And as you can see, running away in this game is guaranteed, and it's super nice. You just feign death, and you can get away 100% of the time. It's a really neat mechanic, and I'm happy for it. And on top of that, it really goes well, as far as the speedrun is concerned especially. It really goes well with the way that battles are taken in this game. So anytime you'll see me run past enemies, you'll see in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen a number with a basically like a timer around it in a circle. Now the number in the center of that timer is the amount of enemies that will fight you if you take the fight at that specific moment. And the timer that wraps around it is, once that timer fills up completely, you're going to take that fight no matter what. Alternatively, what you can do is you can press circle to immediately initiate the fight, and when you do that, every single one of your team members will get a first turn before the enemy does. So a lot of times I'll know that I'm going to take a fight, I'll engage that fight just so that I can immediately run away without having to wait through the enemy getting turns off and things like that. It's significantly faster. Sometimes you can outrun aggro, a lot of the time actually, but in the situations that I can't, I'll be taking fights and running away from them on purpose. Right here is one of the fights that I mentioned earlier that I'll be taking for EXP purposes. So we'll come over here and make sure that all 4 of these people are aggroing us so that we can get more EXP for this fight. We can get outnumbered EXP as well as the 4 times multiplier. And we'll take another one in the very next room with 3 enemies before we get to the very next boss. And right now we're, like I said, on a mission to rescue somebody that Olia is after. And he makes a big difference in the game, so it's important that we do. But a lot of these fights can go a lot of different ways, depending on whether or not you glance, which is basically a miss. Anytime you glance in this game, it means that that your accuracy, it's like in between a miss. Sometimes you can glance a lot or miss a lot, and it can really slow these fights down, or you're forced to have to use a lot of medicine or what have you. But so far, this fight looks like it's going pretty well. Wonder if the devs will appear. I don't know what time it is in Norway right now, but I imagine it's like dead in the middle of the night, so I wouldn't count on it. They are good people, but they do sleep sometimes. I'm not super up to date on Norwegian time zones, so I can't actually accurately tell you what time it is over there. But Cinder Phoenix in chat, like he's mentioning, the devs are very, very involved in this game and the speedrun. They're great guys. They come into chat on occasion when I do runs of the game. They actually helped come up with a bunch of strategies. They gave me some tips how to make certain sections faster and things like that. So, big fan of them. They're really cool people. And again, here's another fight we'll be taking. Hopefully, oh man, they always front load their damage into one person. It's so frustrating. I have a rule of thumb that like if somebody falls below 100 HP, then I'll heal them. And Nart being a pretty low base HP, that stinks. But you'll see me cast an attack focus here with Nart. It's, it is what it sounds like. It's an attack buff. However, what is important to know is that buffs in this game stack multiplicatively. So a lot of the time, you're going to see me just sit here and spam buffs with Nart. And that's done on purpose because it'll add a ton of damage to each attack. And magic focus is even more important once we get a magic user a little bit later on. Oops. Oh well. Cool. So we're going to pick up a couple chests here just so it is a marathon. Might as well have everything we can get. And Kiwami turbos, yeah, I do like my Kiwami turbos, no doubt. But when we entered the swamp, you saw me talk to the lady who was standing out there. She had a little, side quest for us. And that side quest gives 500 EXP and doesn't really lose us but maybe 2 or 3 seconds. So we definitely make use of it. You just have to gather up these 5 books you see me picking up. And that's the last one right there. It's 3 a.m. in Oslo. Yeah, that sounds like it's probably probably a no-go then. But, I don't want to say anything. So right here, you're going to see me use the talent tree and switch Olia's stance. Now, the talents in this game are... The talent board is very minimal. It's very simplistic. But the good news is that a lot of those talents and how simple they are add for... Like, you can really, really load up certain stats and get, like, way out of control with some things. So we'll be loading magic and attack on Eamon and magic on a character we get later in the game. And it leads to some really broken stuff. And it also matters with the... oh, that sucks. It also matters with the character we get later in the game and the amount of turns you take compared to each other. And I'll explain that kind of as we get to it. But right now you're seeing me utilize... Ooh, I don't want to do that. We're just going to have to let him die. Right here you're seeing me utilize Olia's secondary stance. Now, every character in this game has 2 stances. Olia has one where she taunts the enemy. And that forces the enemy to attack her. Please don't kill him. Nice. Really good fight here, then. Real clean. No, I didn't have to use but 1 potion. That's pretty dope. But what happens is she forfeits her ability to attack. Instead, she can only taunt. But any enemy that attacks her, whether they're taunted or not, is going to receive a counter strike. Like, as long as they physically attack her, she's going to counter back every single time. So oftentimes in certain fights where we need the enemy to focus her and we'll just throw all of our items and our healing onto her and keep her propped up, that taunt stance comes in super, super strong. That fight that we just did, you should probably take like 2 levels higher than we are right now, maybe 1, but because of Olia's taunt stance, we're allowed to guarantee that the boss is only going to attack her and just throw potions at her whenever she's low. It's a pretty neat mechanic. Her other stance is just a standard slashing or piercing attack. Eamon's two stances are a ranged mode and a melee mode. He uses a knife and thief stance, or he'll use his gun and blaster stance. Now, Nart's stances are actually really important because he has two that are both really, really good, and deciding which one we want him to be in is sometimes a pain because they are both so strong and we can't have him do both. And you can actually switch stance at any point in battle by hitting the right R1 basically. And Nart's stance is he gives buffs in one and he provides healing and things like that in the other. We'll be trying to utilize items as much as we can so that we can keep Nart in that buff stance. But there are some times where you can't. You have to put him in the healing stance because it just you can't over-heal or out-heal some certain enemies in the game. But what you just saw me do is actually a really unique and interesting property of the game. So if you're fighting enemies, you utilize ammo every time you do a ranged attack. And that ammo is not infinite. You do run out, and you have to go purchase more. Same thing with medicines and stuff like that, obviously. However, in this game, you can actually come here to this island that you can warp at any point in the game. You get a full heal. You can do it from a save stone. And you can come here and plant these plants of varying elements and varying properties. And one of them will give you leaves to make like healing balms and different medicines. And the other will give you like ammo. So you literally grow your own ammo and medicine in this game. So if you can't afford it, you don't have money to buy things from shops, you can always just come here and spend 20 minutes getting yourself real stocked up on resources and supplies. I know a lot of people really, really like that. In the speedrun, you can imagine where waiting for plants is probably something you want to avoid. And thankfully, we routed out next to all of it. I'll do just a little bit of it here in the beginning area just because it doesn't hurt and we're already here. And we'll have a few extra medicines for early on, but we really don't need much. And because we will be using a really broken strategy for the latter half of the game, we won't need any ammo, which is really cool. And that's also one of the changes from the Festival of Magic game. In the original, you had to at least get your fire spuds leveled up to a certain amount to a certain point. So if you were speedrunning that version of the game, you would have to invest a lot of time in raising plants. And thankfully, we don't have to. But in Plummet Island, every single character has a unique role. Nart does most of the gardening and the synthesis. Olia crafts talents. Eamon can use the smith, the forge, to create new weapons and equipment and things like that. And Ive, who is the person you saw me control at the very beginning of the game, and we'll get into her later, she does treasure maps and whatnot, and then the dog Taika can dig stuff up. So it's a pretty neat mechanic that every character has their role and their place, and I like that a lot about this game. But right here, we're going to see a brief scene, and I'll let you guys watch it. It's pretty dope. Your Uncle Benjo gets attacked by some bandits who are after the relic that we uncovered. And he doesn't go down without a fight, though, so do not worry. Good old Uncle Benjo. He threw down for sure. So shouts to him. He also dropped his weapon, and we're going to go pick up that weapon and use it because it's actually a little bit better than the weapon we got now, and it speeds up a couple of the later sections of the game. But now that we know that, we're going to, we warped out, as you can see, to Ramu Villa. Any area that you've been to and touched a save stone at, you can actually fast travel to from Plummet Island. Oh, man. So that's really helpful. You'll be seeing me touch a save stone in a lot of different places just because I'll need to be able to return there later on. And being able to fast travel right out the gate like this is actually super nice for, anybody who has speedrun a game can vouch for how nice fast travel is, especially when it's available. When it's available early. There you go. We got it out. Sorry, I just killed the mess load of Whataburger. My brain is a little foggy right now. But now we got to return back to the scene of the crime where Benjo was captured from, our hometown Zaber. And Eamon's whole reason that he's out here doing these things and trying to get as much money as he can is because his uncle is sick and they're looking for medicine. And they basically just have to, you know, keep buying medicine that just, you know, keep buying medicine that doesn't cure him. It just makes him better for a little bit. And in Suvia, they're hoping to find an all-out cure, especially with the amount of money that they'll be able to get from this artifact. So that's part of what Eamon's backstory is and the reason that he's doing all this in the first place. Blame the Whataburger? Yeah. The Whataburger is at least 20% of it, for sure. I'm willing to wager at least that much. This lady comes out and she basically says, yo, listen, you got kidnapped by some bandits. And everybody's like, well, what are the bandits about? And Nart says, well, I think I have an idea. Those bandits are probably after this relic. Like, you don't realize just how important and strong this thing really is. It's, you know, it actually might be able to uncover a lot of the ancients and their magical powers and why the earth stopped spinning and things like that. So it's a pretty big deal. And basically these bandits have been hired by somebody that they don't know who it is yet to go and uncover the artifact to give them, to utilize that power for evil, obviously. You know, pretty standard in that respect. But we want to give it to the good guys who are going to give us money for it. So, you know, it's a win-win situation right there. But the bad guys hired the bandits. Imagine them like, I always make the comparison to the Foot Clan from the Ninja Turtles, where they're just basically hired mercenaries. And that's kind of how Adarin and her gang of bandits are. But now we have to begin our journey towards Suvia. We don't really know where Benjo is, but we think we can get answers somewhere along the way, so we're going to do that. So we're heading there now, but it just so happens we run into somebody, and we... it's funny because a lot of this game is you run into somebody and he says, well, before, I'll go with you, but first, I need to get this done. And you're like, all right, let's do that. And then you do that and you move on, you run into somebody else, and they say the same thing. So a lot of this game story-wise is you run into Nart, he needs to go find Olia. You run into Olia, she needs to find the frog boy. You come over here, you run into Ive, and she needs to find her dog. And it's like a never-ending cycle. There's poor Uncle Benjo is as sick as can be, sitting in a jail somewhere. And you're like, well, hold on a second. First we gotta do what this person needs to get done, and then we'll continue our journey. But the party members you get in this game are actually really, really cool. I have quite a fondness to Nart, this guy right here, the dog, Ive, Eamon. Everybody except for Olia and Pat are actually super cool characters. And each one of their backstories are pretty neat. When the Snow Castle redid the game, they made sure to add a little bit of flavor to each one of their little backstories and whatnot. So they all have a cool little, you know, side story you can follow up on. There's tons of side quests you can do. So right here, we're just going to haste Olia. And we need to kill these things that you see right here, these Amory Lanterns. Now, the way that Amory Lanterns work is whenever you kill them, they drop a color. And Eamon can absorb this energy with his Amory bracelet that your uncle gave you a little bit earlier on before we did the first puzzle. And you can charge these pedestals with it. And it's important to charge the pedestals because they are what you need to do in order to progress with these puzzles. So we're going to move forward. We're going to run right in, and we got a little bit more. Wore off. That's what I figured. I was trying something out right there. Didn't really pan out. Doesn't matter. So as you can see, you can switch between the characters pretty fluidly. You just hold the direction and press R1, and there's like a wheel that pops up. And whatever character is, you know, in what position, you just move your trigger to that spot. Come on, man. So these Amory Lanterns have a bad habit of stunning. Now we only need to kill any fight that an Amory Lantern is in and another enemy also is in. We actually don't need to kill anything but the lantern. And so you'll see, like in that first fight, you saw me kill it and then run away. Because the enemies that are usually with Amory are like the Jins, and they give really, really poor EXP, and they just draw out the fight for no reason. Yo, Pasama, HGH, Sand Knight, thank you guys so much for being here. Always a pleasure to have my homies come out and check out Earthlock. It's a cool game. It's good to see you guys. But Amory, they have a bad habit of stunning people. And Nart is fine to get stunned because he doesn't really contribute anything besides haste. But when Olia or Eamon gets stunned, it slows us down. Slows us down pretty substantially because they're our main sources of damage, of course. Nice. So sometimes these fights, even though they're not difficult, sometimes they can get really drawn out. Especially if in that 2 Amory fight, if they both decide to stun, and they both go on to your damage dealers, it's so frustrating. Hey, Sandite, I appreciate that, my guy. I appreciate that. I really do. You guys are too kind to me. But we're going to utilize these little charges of Amory here to charge the center pedestal. If there was a way that we could charge the center pedestal without doing all of the extra stuff that we're doing here, it would obviously save us a little bit of time. But I tried a couple of really cheesy mechanics in order to get some of the charges earlier than you should. And it was obvious that Snowcastle thought of those things, or maybe people did them and they patched them out. I'm not exactly sure. But there's like the yellow charge. I tried to get it to come through the wall, and right as it would be in range for you to be able to grab it, it runs away, or it stops. So it was definitely very apparent that they had that cheese strategy in mind. And as a result, this ends up being one of the slowest puzzles we do, just because we don't really have any workarounds to it. A little bit later on, you're going to see me do, there's a sewer puzzle, a little bit different than this. You don't use Amory, but actually today, while I was practicing, found a skip in there, and a puzzle that is Amory required later on at the Tower of Dur. We can actually use a little bit of a strategy by taking Amory from another place and bringing it there, and we're able to skip that entire puzzle, which is like a 10 minute-ish puzzle, give or take. So there is a lot of really neat things you can do and lots of neat tech as far as the puzzles are concerned to speed them up. Just had to figure those out over time as I've done runs. But Gooby, if there's anything you want to say about the Marathon Man, you're more than welcome to right now. We just got a little bit more puzzle to solve and some fights to do, so take it away if so, and if not, I'll just keep on going. Oh, yikes. My movement was pretty poor right there. So, you saw me actually spin the blue dial downstairs. Sometimes I forget to do that, and that bridge that I just crossed won't be there, and it's so frustrating. Because you have to go, you lose 30 seconds. It's rough. Alright, nice. That's a good stun. It's worth mentioning that you can't run away from fights that you're stunned in. You have to wait for that person to be then unstunned. And it's usually 3 turns. Most stuns in the game are 3 turns. Some are a little bit longer, but... so if we go outside and fight the Amory again, which we will, and it stuns us, we can't run away from that enemy that's left. You can either just pass your turn a bunch until that stun wears off, or you can invest the time into killing the enemy. But usually it's faster to just pass turns, so you don't have to sit through tons of animations. But that was, all in all, a pretty quick Zabirum Temple puzzle right there. Sometimes those Amorys or the Amory Lanterns that we kill are really not agreeable, and they stun the worst people, and the fights drag on and take forever. But that one is actually pretty good. And like I said, we're going to fight this fight again, and we're going to take this red Amory charge, and we're going to take it all the way to this desert area that we'll be at a little bit later in the game. And by doing that, it allows us to... Oh, wow. By doing that, it allows us to skip a little bit of the section later on. Yeah. Yeah, don't support me Sometimes I make bad decisions, so I can understand that HGH for sure. But as you can see, Eamon's got a bracelet on, and that will glow with whatever color it is that you are... whatever color it is that you currently have on you. You can only keep one color on you at a time, but later we're going to get to this desert area that has a puzzle, or like one of those Amory receptors. And because we already have the red on us, we can skip having to go fetch the red in that area. That is a trick that Snowcastle taught me as well. So shout outs to them for that one. But there's a lot of intricacy that goes along with like the Amory charge. Like when you zone into a dungeon, that Amory then has like a timer on it. But if you stay in the overworld, which is what we're doing now, then that Amory won't ever receive a timer before it goes off and wears off essentially. So certain places you can bring it, certain places you cannot. Fortunately, the Tower of Dur later on, that skip is made possible because we can do it fast enough that we don't have to worry about it wearing off and losing its color. But now, story-wise, we've regained Ive, and she says, "Hey, you know, I'll come with you. I'm actually from Suvia," and she just graduated from the flight academy at the Suvian military, and she basically, her father runs it all as the captain of the flight academy, and she wants to go out on a mission. Her dad says, "I don't care that you graduated. I don't think you're ready," and on the sly, she sneaks out, grabs a plane. And wouldn't you know it, she crashes into something. Now, your gang, your group of people, when they return to Zaber and they see that Benjo is gone, and then they see smoke coming up from the temple, they think that the two are related, but they're not. It's just Ive happened to crash into a really favorable spot where the team could find her. But she says that she'll willingly go to Suvia with you. Given the fact that she is in the Suvian military, she'll be able to help you out a little bit. But first, she needs to go find her dog. And her dog, his name is Taika. You saw him at the beginning of the game, and he's very important. He is going to be the hard carry of this run when we get to him, so it's imperative that we go and rescue him. And you saw those goblins in that other area. You saw them taking him down that elevator lift. So we are going to be going and fetching that guy, because he's broke. Right here, like I mentioned earlier, we're going to be taking a very specific amount of encounters, and we're going to try to take 6 right here, total, in order to maximize the amount of EXP that we get. Now that we have Ive, she's actually level 5 already, so we're going to put Olia in taunt stance. The enemies that are flying up here, only people with ranged attacks can hit them. So the people on the ground, we're going to use Olia to taunt them when available. And the people in the sky, we're going to use Eamon and Ive to attack with. Now, Ive is actually significantly stronger than Eamon right now. Eamon gets a little bit better in a level or two, but Ive is definitely our focus as far as damage is concerned. So we're going to keep Ive hasted. And on the next turn, we're going to utilize Bond, which is something I haven't really explained, but I will as I use it. Another thing I need to explain is Amory, both of which are really, really important. But without like a actual visible... Oh, come on, don't kill him, please. Nice. Okay, excellent. Ooh, what are the chances? Do I risk 2 turns? Yeah, we'll risk 2 turns, why not? Oh, the hard punish. Yikes. Oh well. I took my shot, and I failed. So, Bond is the... you can see the little blue bar that is underneath the pair of the HP pair of the characters and the icons that they have over there. And the way that it works is, as you do damage to certain enemies, or in fights, that bond will go up. And when you have a full bond, you then gain access to that character's special or bond stance. Now, each one of them has their own unique one, and we'll use it a couple different ways. But what's most important is, based on who's bonded together, it makes a really big difference. Every character that's bonded and the level of what their bond is actually receives like passive abilities, and you can use those. You know, they get things like fire resistance and stuff like that. And it's really, really crucial for later on, because we'll be bonding the way that we do our bonds are going to be absolutely intentional, because we need some of those passive abilities on specific people by the end of the game, and whenever they're paired up together, they'll receive, those passive upgrades. Right now, it doesn't really matter a whole lot, but before we do the next boss, we're going to switch bonds around because we need Eamon and Ives' passive bond, which increases range attack damage. So we'll be doing that here in a little bit. But first, we're going to come back to Plummet Island for a full heal. Everybody leveled up. Now, whenever you level up, you don't get like a full team heal or whatever. That character doesn't get full HP. So we'll be warping back to Plummet Island strategically a few different times. And what you saw me do right there was Ives' overworld ability. It's a sneak, basically. You hit square and she goes into this tiptoe. Your movement is slowed, but the enemies won't aggro you. And we'll use that in combination with Olia's, which is a shout and attracts enemies. We're going to sneak past certain enemies so that we can get into a spot where we can shout with Olia and attract more in order to manipulate the EXP we get. So a lot of really neat mechanics. Each character has a use. Even Pat later on has use. So it's really cool that they managed to make every single character, at least, like, even if you don't want them in your party, they're at least useful. There we go, 6. That was close. So again, we're going to haste Ive here, and we're going to do this fight just the same way we did the last one. Oh, yikes. Hopefully with less screwing up, but you never know. No promises. And for a long time, these fights were actually quite difficult. It took a long time for me to be able to math everything out and figure out exactly what the best EXP route was and why. And you can get bodied in this fight, but I make a very specific amount of medicine, and I make a specific amount of ammunition and things like that in order to be able to deal with these fights a little bit more favorably, because they used to be super rough. We used to die here all the time. Everybody used to make fun of me. They were like, oh no, here come the goblin bosses, and they're just regular encounters we take on purpose. Nice. Now we actually need Eamon and Nart to be able to earn bond. We need it for the next fight, and I might have utilized it a little bit late in the previous fight. So if we have to, we'll stall out this fight just a tad in order for them to get that bond and speed up the next fight substantially. But as you can see, anytime Eamon does damage or Nart casts an ability on an ally other than himself, he's going to develop a little bit of bond. And another thing that's very important is Amory. So below the HP of every single character, you're going to see like these little yellow squares. And those are your Amory chips. And the way that they work is essentially every ability that you have access to is tied to an Amory amount. And as you can see here, the Amory for Taunt is 2. So it takes 2 of those Amory in order to utilize that ability. Okay, let's see. Maybe if we rest. I want to make sure that they have bond for this next fight. So what we'll do is do this. Pass her turn. Heal her up. Okay, excellent. Good decision making there. Oh, perfect. Excellent. Everything went great. And the Amory, the way that it works is every time you take a turn, it's your character's turn, you gain 1 Amory chip. Now, if you choose to skip your turn by resting, you get an Amory chip for resting. So sometimes you can get 2, depending on if you rest or not. And it's really, really important because later on we'll get a character that uses a lot of Amory with each turn, and balancing out just how much we utilize per turn is going to be pretty important to manage. That should be accurate. So right here we're going to just tiptoe in your Jordans until we can get these enemies in a favorable spot, and then we'll shout with Olia, and we'll take 7 of them, which is way more than last time, obviously, but So the way that this is going to work is we're going to... Oh, I didn't heal. Oh, yikes. I actually need to just run from this then. Because we'll get bodied, and we don't want to get bodied. So it's important to take your battles, and we're not penalized by running away, so it's no big deal. So right here, what you're going to see me do is fire trap drop, which is what we'll do. It basically puts like the next time they use a physical attack, oops, I shouldn't have done that. Not a ranged attack, but like an actual melee, it's going to pop and do damage to them. You can also forcibly pop that by shooting anybody with a spud from aiming. So we're going to shoot everybody with a spud and do a ton of damage all at once. We probably had that fight gone the exact same way. We probably could have done it without healing, but definitely don't want to risk it. So that is it for the EXP that we'll need to farm up. We're actually doing fairly well, despite having to run from that fight. That was a miscalculation on my part. But tiptoeing in your Jordans, indeed. Indeed, my guy. But we're going to go farm up just a couple of medicines real quick. When we go farm our plants, they're going to level up and they're going to yield twice as much, which is important. But we need to have at least a couple of medicine for this next fight because it's kind of troll. And while we wait for the plants to yield results, we'll do some menuing and things like that to minimize our time loss. We're going to switch to Nart. Usually it's faster, but sometimes Nart trolls you by running the opposite direction. And then we're going to add Might to him. I don't want to add Earthmaster yet, so we'll add Magic. Earthmaster is important to use for Taika later on. I don't want to forget about it. And we're going to switch these two around so that they receive. And as you can see here, this is the bonds. So we're going to get Ammo Master as soon as we get our bond charge all the way up. And it's important to set that now so that we can have it when it matters a little bit later on. So that should give us 3 potions here. And that should be enough to go fight Gob King. I mean, if we got to utilize some of our revives in that fight, that's also fine. The only way that you lose meaningful EXP is if somebody finishes a fight dead. So there's a few instances where we really can't afford to have that happen. So even if I have somebody dead for almost the entire fight, we're going to wait until they get to the very end of the fight and then revive them just to make sure that they don't miss out on any EXP. Some of them, though, the fights are so difficult, we just have to leave them dead and eat the loss. But this guy right here, man, Gob King, he is one of the more challenging fights because we don't have a whole lot of broken EXP or a broken character or anything like that. We just kind of have to fight this as you would normally fight it, and we do it at a lower level than you probably really should. But the way that it works is we're going to lean on Electro Lance from Ive, and we're going to lean on Fire Spud from... His name is Goob King. Yeah, it is. It's probably why he's such a pill. We're going to use Electro Lance from Ive and Fire Spud from Eamon in hopes it will land DOTs, which will contribute a little bit of damage. You'll notice here that I have to pass my turns with Olia. So you can only use... You got wrecked. You can only use melee attacks, or I'm sorry, ranged attacks on this guy. If you do use actual melee, he will counterattack and it hurts really bad. So we put Olia in counter stance just on the off chance that he actually does, just choose to attack Olia of his own volition. Like that, it helps a lot. And she'll counter back, and counters aren't penalized the same way. However, he does... Oh, nice. Okay, good. He will drop these confusions, and those things are an absolute pain. Especially if Nart gets confused, he'll, heal. Oh, Ive being... Okay, that's not bad. Ive being confused kind of stinks, because she'll sometimes snipe our own characters. Oh, she shot herself. That's totally okay. And we need to just make sure that we're managing Nart really, really well, and that he's not getting confused. Because we need to have his bond, and the sooner we get his bond, the better for all of us. So, 8 list kisses. Okay, that's fine as well. But yeah, this fight goes so bad sometimes. It's just an ugly fight. And a lot of it has to do with just how Please don't be Nart. Okay, cool. A lot of it has to do with just how poorly the targeting is. Like, if he decides to attack Olia a lot, it's awesome because we get a bunch of free attacks. But if he decides to attack people who are weak, like Nart, then you get a little shafted. Okay, so let me see who's dead. Ooh, that's gonna hurt. And anytime a character dies, they do lose a little bit of bond. So it's important to keep people propped up, especially if you're gonna try to utilize their bond later on. Oof, that hurt. The good news is we can get him up. So long that Nart doesn't get attacked here on this next turn, we'll be able to use his bond. No, please don't be Nart! Oh no, that sucks. What are you gonna do? So Nart healed the enemy here. You can see, real not a bro move. Okay, cool. Finally, we're good to go. So now we can use Nart's special, his bond, which is a huge regen. We like that, it's good. But this is, believe it or not, actually probably one of the harder fights in the entire game, just because of how annoying the God King can be. But yeah, like right there, great. Anytime he attacks Olia, amazing, but he chooses to not for some reason. No. Come on, dude. Come on, Nart. Why you gotta do me so dirty, my guy? We don't want to use Amon's bond here. It's not really worth using. It doesn't really do a whole lot of damage. Okay, that's helpful at least. Come on. This fight is so ugly, man. It's karma for dude, it really is. This is going just an awful type of way, but it's alright. It should be over here shortly. This should be the last hit then. Thank goodness. Thank goodness it has ended. So Amon did get a little bit less EXP because he spent a few turns dead, but it's not meaningful enough for it to like make a significant difference. So here we're going to run into a fight at the bottom of this area, and the reason for that is because we need to go down the elevator lift, but the goblins, oh no, took the trigger with them. We're actually going to utilize this actually for a free heal. Cool. Which is kind of a pain. We got to run all the way down here to the bottom of this cavern. We're going to try to drag a couple of enemies with us here. We want to take 5. All right, perfect. One day, Nart... Yeah, I know, really. It happens so frequently. It's kind of a joke that Nart is really on the enemy's team in that fight. He always is. And it's worth mentioning that Nart doesn't actually gain bond anytime he heals himself. It has to be an ability used on another teammate. Now, Nart has the ability to buff everybody at once, and when he does that, it gives him a ton of bond. So we can usually develop bond super fast. We'll do it like this. We'll murk all these guys real quick. You know, we might as well use this because we won't have access to it later, so. Nice. Olia is so good. Her character is so powerful early on. We're actually about to lose her, unfortunately. But we do get her back later. However, by the time we get her back, she won't really be useful to us anymore. We'll have replaced her with a bigger and better character. But now Amon is level 6, so all is right with the world. All we did was eat a little bit of time loss, but we can make up tons of it. And my estimate is definitely more fat than it needed to be. And we're also the last run, right? So it's like, who cares, you know? I'm going to make this a 7-hour run. Which, coincidentally enough, my first run ever of this game was 7 hours, and the very next one was 4.5. I care. No, I wouldn't do that to you, buddy. We'll come in underestimate. I can guarantee it. Please don't go for 7 hours. Yeah, I actually got to go to sleep eventually tonight as well, so for both of us, I got you, baby. Don't worry. But it was funny when I routed this game initially. I was just trying to like make everything. I was just trying to make stuff work. How could I get from one boss to the next? And I would route basically in chunks. Like, how do I get to this next boss and not die to it? And then from there, I would now we'll route. How do I get to the boss after that and not die to it? And it just kept repeating. Now, it took us weeks, and we got all the way to the very end, and the final boss was like unbeatable. So I tried some things out. We discovered Taika strategies, basically. So in my very first run, I utilized that a tiny bit. Realizing how broken it actually was, I decided to utilize it throughout the entirety of the run, wherever we could, a lot earlier than we did previously. And that by itself pretty much saved like over 2 hours. And from there, now the run is down to 3 hours and 11 minutes. Basically, 3:11:59, I think. So it's come a long way in just a span of months. A lot of cool new things I keep finding and new optimizations that I stumble upon. Every once in a while, Snow Castle will be like, hey, we notice you don't do this. Maybe you should try it. And that saves me some time. And then like today, practicing for this event, I found a skip that saves a little over a minute. So all good things. So here we're going to give her precision and agility because they're terrible talents. And we want to... we're losing her, so we put all the crappy talents on her so she didn't take them with her. And then we'll be using them on the people who matter later on. Now, because they are armor, they're not like... If you forget to do that, you're not run isn't dead. But you'll have to put like an agility or something like that on Ive at some point, and it's not optimal for sure. So we're going to do stun, might. She's going to want... Oh, did I do something wrong? Oh, no, I didn't. We want him to have energized and magic focus, and that's it, looks like. All right, cool. So as you can see in my bracelet, we still have the red Amory, which is important because we'll be using it here in a little bit. And that allows us, like I said earlier when I mentioned the desert area, this is that desert area. We'll be able to skip. You got to run to one side of the desert and get the blue charge, and run to the other side of the desert and get the red charge. Now, we actually only have to get one because we brought the red charge with us. And this area is pretty neat. It has its own unique mechanic about it. I'll kind of explain. But first, we have to warp back to town and we'll farm just a tiny bit more. And actually, I'm trying to think about it. I think this is the last time we farm for the remainder of the run. So, as you can see, we get rid of it. We reroute that out pretty early on. And saving this game is super fast, so since we're in a marathon, I might as well save. Every time I touch a save stone, never hurts. And there are some fights that it's like, you're not guaranteed to win. Twisted Guardian and the final two bosses can sometimes prove to be a little bit of a challenge. So we'll save before those just in case. But ideally, we should be making through this run without a single death. Alrighty, cool beans. So the way that this mechanic in this area works is as you run from shade spot to shade spot, your character starts to develop heat. And once you reach a peak amount of heat, you'll suffer heat stroke, and it'll basically take you to the last cutscene or the last shade spot. Whatever's closer. So you see me running around in circles. I do that for two different reasons. The first is I know exactly how long the heat takes to regenerate. So I spin in circles as I know that 7 rotations is going to be enough for me to make it from one spot to the next. Also, in this game, you don't start off, whenever you run, you don't start running at full speed. You can actually see here, Nart is a little less susceptible to it, but a lot of characters, it takes them like a half second or so for them to reach full momentum. And by running in circles, you maintain your momentum, so you don't actually have to, you stay at full speed no matter what. And I count my rotations, know exactly how many I need to do to be able to run from spot to spot without suffering heat stroke. Sometimes the enemies troll you and they get in your way. But you can play this. You actually have more time than you think to make it from spot to spot. You really do. Cool, cool. And now we're going to start the next fight, which is Quad Dragon. And after this fight, we will get Taika, which is going to be nice because he's not OP early on. He is a good character to have. Taika as a character is basically like this game's blue mage. You'll learn spells. We'll learn 2 spells primarily from enemies in the game, and you can then cast those. So I love blue mages. I really do. They're cool in every game I've ever played, to be honest. But this one is especially cool because he's a little busted, and we lean on him for the vast majority of the route. So in this fight, we're going to use Electro Lance and Water Blast. And once he reaches about half HP, the Quad Dragon will start charging his next move. So we're gonna haste the DPSs right quick. There you go. So he's charging his move now, and we can usually kill him before that move even comes out. So, oh, not quite. That's all right. And that's Quad Dragon for you. Really easy. He's kind of like a mini boss. He's not worrisome enough for us to have to save beforehand or figure out strats for. So we're gonna come here and charge this because we again held on to that red Amory. Yeah, the Dog King. What's going on, Chrono? Good to see you guys in chat, keeping those frogs strong. I appreciate it. The bet on an emote will hopefully be approved in a couple days. They're really thinking about that one. All right, cool beans. One thing that's worth mentioning, if you're especially in this, when this enemy chases you right here, you can actually take that fight and get yourself a few extra unpenalized steps at the end of it if you're really close to suffering heat stroke, or you're not going to make it. There we go. Running it by the end. Yeah, everyone else, dude, Twitch is definitely... Sometimes I feel like they don't like me. I agree, but nah, I'm sure I submitted it at a bad time. Nothing against Twitch. Please don't, please. I swear, Twitch. Oh, yeah, that's because usually I do things in a different order. That's okay. Cool. So, Taika does come with fire and water breath. Both of them are pretty bad. Fire breath we'll use a couple different times just on enemies that are weak to fire. But the main thing we're going to use is the first spell we're going to learn, which is Quake. It's really good. And it has a chance to stun. So in this game, it's really important to have enemies take fewer turns because, first of all, how long they are, and second of all, how strong the enemies you fight in this game are. So 9 is the magic number. If you're not comfortable with making runs, you think they might be too far or whatever, 9 is the max amount of rotations you can do to get your heat all the way down. So here we're going to take off. We're good to go. And before we continue, we're actually going to warp out and do just a little side thing. We're going to go kill a barnacle. Barnacles are these, there's 4 barnacles in the game. They're basically like these little quest monsters, and killing each one of them gives you a massive amount of EXP. And it's very, very important that you utilize them. They basically are a free guaranteed level, and in this game, given that the level cap is so low, 4 guaranteed levels scattered throughout the game are really meaningful. So we're going to use this stone here to warp, and we're going to go back to the early areas of the game, back to the Zabiram Temple. We're going to go fight one of those barnacles, and in that same fight that we fight the barnacle, we're going to, we're going to learn the spell Quake. So it's 2 birds, 1 stone kind of thing. Oh, no, I lied. This is the last place we do the harvesting. Sorry, I didn't mean to lie to you guys. Please forgive me. Cool beans. Now, one cool trick that took me a while to like really figure out the difference between is when we fight this barnacle, he gives a ton of EXP, right? Well, the enemies that are around him are super weak. They don't give hardly anything. But if you still fight 8 enemies, including the barnacle, that multiplier will be applied on the barnacles. Will be applied on the barnacles. What am I trying to say here? On the EXP total that he has. And we got to move everybody's everything around because we want Taika to have. We want Taika to have. Oh, come on, give me 8. Guess we're gonna have to rock with 7. That's okay. Why did it make Barnacle make you laugh? I don't know, man. I don't know. That's odd. You should. How am I supposed to say it? Am I saying it weird, or it's just a funny word? It's like some SpongeBob memes or something. Barnacles are actually strong to exploding damage, which is the damage Eamon does. So he kind of is meh against the barnacles. Fortunately, Ive is really good, and so is Taika. But the rest of these guys are real simple to kill. We're gonna use Sixth Sense, which is how Taika learns spells in this game. And as you can see, we learned Quake already. Now we just gotta kill it's the word itself. Okay, that's good. We just kill these guys. They're a breeze. And they're not too difficult. And they're important because they give us a ton of EXP. Like the amount of EXP we get from fighting Barnacle with enemies and without is a pretty significant difference. Even the fact that we just are missing 1 here is gonna hurt us a little bit. We'll have to probably take a desert a little later on, but it'll be okay. Oh, not quite. Oh well, good try, Taika. So as you can see, just heaps of EXP. Oh, that didn't penalize us too bad. Eamon always kind of lags behind everybody in EXP. Most of the time, he'll end the game a level lower than everybody else, which is fine. He kind of falls off in usefulness as we get to the second half of the game. In the first half, he retains it a little bit. He has a couple of different uses, especially once Gouge becomes a little bit stronger. But now that we have Taika, we're gonna start pushing our resources into Taika as best we can because Taika is sick. He's crazy. We're going to Solar Array. Now we're going to work our way through the rest of the desert. We're all ready to rock, locked and loaded. Now this is basically a tutorial that explains what Taika's ability is. He has the ability to dig, which we'll use a couple different times only to find certain strong chests. I will pick up the Princess Ive skin. I don't know if that donation incentive is one way or the other right now. But if somebody donates for the Princess Ive skin, even if it's, I think they're tied, so anything, you can decide whether or not we wear it or don't. And I will have it on hand to do that whenever that time comes. But we'll get Olia's alternate skin and Nart's once we reach Suvia. So you got about 45 minutes for that. Ive's skin is still even. So there you go, guys. Ladies and gents, this is your opportunity. Princess Ive is pretty cool. She's got like her hair in a bun. It's like a whole ordeal. So again, this is an Amory fight, which means that we just want to kill the Amory and nothing else. We should be able to kill it here with Eamon. Nice. So then we run away. We get the Amory charge. Oh, it's kind of far out there. We go run back to the shade as fast as we can. Hurry. We can charge this. Sometimes this receptacle is a pain. And it bugs out to where you can't spin it right away. And you have to run back to the shade before you can spin it. It does that almost every single time. And sometimes that can really troll you because those enemies are sitting there waiting to punch you in the head. Yo, Steve, I didn't mean to miss you, man. I just was reading up in the chat, saw your name. What's going on, man? It's good to have. It's good to have all you homies. Thank you guys so much for showing out. Alrighty, good run. Once you get a real good feel for just how long some of these running sections are with your heat stroke meter, all the homies indeed, you can get really greedy, I guess is a good word to say. You can get really greedy with just how close you push it. There's sometimes I get punished. My stream chat laughs at me occasionally. You'll lose like 15-20 seconds just because you get heat stroke because you were trying to save a half second. It's one of those situations. Especially in this next puzzle. This next puzzle is kind of tight. You have to watch your movement pretty well. Because you got to run between... you got to cover a decent amount of space. Oh yeah, Chrono, I totally agree. They did a great job with making this feel legit, where you're like, oh man, like you have a sense of urgency, and the screen getting brighter and brighter and brighter, like that definitely intensifies that sense of urgency. You can also, it has like an audio, to it that sounds like you're sizzling. Sounds like you're cooking something on a skillet. We're going to stand right here in this moving shade. Once it goes back in a second time, we are good to go. And we are done with the puzzles here. We're going to go... I'm actually going to do some talents. I'm going to work back to Plummet and make a couple items just, for the heck of it. It's a marathon after all. Get fried, fish getting fried on the skillet. That's exactly what it feels like. Cool beans. Okay, excellent. So we're exactly where we need to be right now as far as our talents are concerned. We want Taika to have double magic. He's going to get an EXP bonus. Oh, we need... Oh, never mind. He's fine. So the reason I do the talents before I warp is because we put a talent on Taika, increases his max HP. And if we do it after we warp, we won't get that full heal. So, there you go. So we're going to... Oops. We're going to warp to Taika really quick. We're going to dig up the Princess Ives skin. Should be right here. There it is. Then we're going to warp back to Nart. Or try to, at least. Sometimes I I fumble that a little bit. It does sound dire and desperate. It's one of my favorite areas in the game. It's definitely a cool mechanic. I can't think of any other RPG I've ever played that has like mechanics like that. Oh, we got so many medicines. Jeez Louise. Means we only use like... Oh no, we made some beforehand, that's right. Oh, and you know what? Very important step. I almost forgot. Okay, we're good to go. So now we're going to fight Chiron. Chiron is a titan. He's one of 3 titans in the game. Neuron, who works a very similar way at the end of the game, and the Hollow Knight, who is an optional secret boss. Probably the toughest fight in the whole game. He's it's a DPS race to the finish for that bad boy, and I'm pretty sure that incentive did get met. So at the end of the run, I will be showcasing that off. So I do appreciate all you guys for donating. It is for a good cause, and we get to see some cool stuff as a result. So, but this guy here, you have to. Oh, okay. You have to kill his hands before you can do damage to his head, and he'll die once his head has, once his head dies, basically. And he'll give you a certain amount of turns before he, what's the word I'm looking for? Before he, like, gets back up, I guess, is a way to describe it. He'll regenerate his arms, and he'll stand up. And when he does that, he will go through a few turns where he can't be damaged by anything. And then he'll do like this big, super strong kill move. So what we're doing right now is on Taika, we're casting a spell called Elemental Absorb, which will allow us to absorb that big kill move that he does. And then we'll switch Taika out and just DPS race it from that point. But this fight can get a little tricky depending on who Chiron decides to attack. Like that attack right there is pretty punishing. Oh, we're okay. And we actually want Taika to take his turn. Oh my goodness. We want Taika to take his turn before... Never mind, I lied. Because now we gotta re-elemental absorb Eamon. Oh, super troll, man. It's okay, we'll use a big heal. Not a big deal. Nice. So unfortunately, we're going to lose a little bit of damage on this first phase because Taika needs to switch stances still. But we'll hasten, so maybe he'll get a third turn off. We'll see. So just do as much damage as possible here. Oh, wow, we got a... maybe Eamon can get another turn. Please. Oh, brilliant. All right, that was a really good phase then. We ended up doing more than half his HP. And now that everybody has Elemental Absorb on them, we actually can just pass our turns. Eamon is going to put Mark Target, which increases damage from ranged attacks. The others are just going to rest, and Nart is going to heal people until we can attack again. So. There it is, Inferno. That's the ability that would kill everybody if it did hit us. And we don't want to use our bond in this fight because we're going to need it for the next one. Okay. At least, at the very least, we're going to need... Oh, nice. We're going to need Nart and Titus for sure. Okay, that was good. Oh my goodness, double crits. Sweet G's. Oh, we got a little unlucky with that, but it's okay. So we're going to haste Taika because Taika's going to have to rest to get an Amory back. But we should be able to push more than enough damage here anyways. Okay, Eamon. I'm looking at the turn orders to see how much value I can get off of all that. It shouldn't matter though because we did so much damage in the first phase. Okay, cool. That was a great decision making right there. Brilliant. That was actually a pretty good Chiron fight. Aside from the one death that set us back about a turn. Otherwise, that was pretty clean. So now we're done with him. There is another enemy way late in the game that works in the same exact way. Like you got to do the same stuff. But fortunately, we'll have a really, really busted Taika. And that guy actually dies in one turn. As opposed to, or a single cycle. Which is funny. The enemies in the later part of the game, we end up fighting and being able to kill so much faster just because we're so strong at that point. But like I mentioned earlier, we got barnacles to fight. This is the second barnacle in the game, and this guy's actually a little bit difficult. So we're going to... we'll do it like this then, I think. Give him resilience. Everybody's got bond. Alrighty. We're just gonna have to wing it. Sometimes this guy beats the crap out of you, sometimes he's really nice. But what we want to see happen is we want to see him use an ability called Barnacle's Challenge. And Barnacle's Challenge is it puts a DOT stack on you. Anytime that you attack the Barnacle, he's going to anytime you physically attack him, you're gonna receive a DOT. And not a DOT, I'm sorry, a debuff rather. And that debuff will increase the amount of damage you receive from his Firestorm ability later on. But we should be, because we already got oh, please kill. Nice. Oh, wow, great. Because we already got the Barnacle's Challenge, that usually means if you see one challenge that you're going to make it through that fight without dying. Now, if you do have somebody die, it just means you're probably going to have to do an extra fight in this quick little grind we do here in a second. So that fight went pretty well. Sometimes it goes south. The next Barnacle is really, really easy, the third one, but we won't do him until quite a bit later. And the fourth one is pretty rough. That one that you just saw and the fourth one are are really the only ones that'll present you any kind of problem. But man, they can sometimes get. Sometimes I end up with just one person alive, and only one person gets the full EXP buff. But as long as it's Taika, and it always is, that's really what matters the most. Unfortunately, this isn't one of those games where if characters are dead, more EXP is given to others. They just miss out on the EXP outright. So here we're going to equip some stuff. As you can see, we got a bunch of levels from the Barnacle. We're going to equip Quake. Nart probably needs... No, he doesn't. He needs Resilience. We're going to put these two in their melee stance. We're going to warp the Scroll Road Desert. So right here, we're going to take 4 fights. We're going to take 2, warp, and then we'll take 2 more. We need to take 4. These guys give a decent amount of EXP and die pretty quickly, especially with Taika now being quite strong. Oh, so they're pretty fast fights. We're going to spread out our damage. We're going to cast our magic buff stack with Nart, and we're just going to mow these things down for some EXP. We need to have everybody at level 10. Then we're going to go fight a guy named Shriga. And Mushy is, we're definitely going to have to save it for him. He's about 60-40 whether or not you win on the first try. But he gives you a crazy amount of EXP, just as much as the Barnacles do. And it makes the fight immediately after him significantly better. So it's a risk you have to take. And when I'm going for PB attempts, you can imagine that's usually a pretty safe reset point. It looks like Eamon is a little bit behind on EXP, but I don't think that's going to warrant a whole other cycle of encounters. Oh, super nice. And one thing that you might notice is that when Taika does his AoE, every single enemy receives the same amount of damage. And the reason for that is that when you do something that does AoE damage, it splits that damage. If you do something that does 1,000, every single enemy you're fighting is going to receive equal parts of that 1,000. So it basically splits it. So it makes a lot of sense to just, first of all, because you don't want enemies to take as many turns, you'll kill them. You'll kill enemies off as opposed to trying to spread out damage. And when this fight, it's a little bit different because I know in a certain amount of turns we're always going to get the kills that we need. But it makes sense in later fights or bosses and things like that to dispatch enemies, like to focus enemies down before, as opposed to like working on them all at once. Because the less enemies on the screen, the more each one of them is going to take from Taika's AoEs or any AoE in the game. But Taika is the main idea where that's most impactful. Sometimes these guys control you and you only attack 3. You gotta run away and attack 4 at once. Because like I said, the EXP is figured out a very, very specific way, so we can't afford to take any less than is routed in. And we need to make sure 2 things need to happen. First off, it's not must, but it would be really nice if Eamon and Ive could have full bond by the end of what we're doing here. And it would also be super nice if, you know what I'm actually going to do, is give her this. And give him this. Okay, cool. It would help that if they all had bond. There we go. Because the next fight is kind of rough to do, and it helps to have every advantage you can. But what is most important is that Nart and Taika actually level up their bond. So they need to be at bond level 2, which gives us the ability to use 2 Amory, or 2 charges, basically, whenever we switch into that special mode. And that's really, really, really important for Mashriga, because Mashriga will spawn ads, and we'll need Taika's strong magic to be able to kill all of them at some point. Mushy is rough, man. He's really rough. He can do a lot of harm. Everybody 10, except oh nope. Ooh, but he did get. You know what we're gonna do? We're gonna do one more fight. Looks like that's what we gotta do here. So unfortunate that we couldn't do it in 4 like we usually do, but we need those guys to be where we want them. So We'll do one more, and then we'll do the Mushriga fight, just to be safe. Now, Mushy is a huge pain in the behind, so we don't want to take any risks, especially in a marathon. So, and it'll also give us the opportunity to get Eamon and Ive to the bond that we need them to be at. So, no worries. And one thing that is worth mentioning is that you don't really lose time when you decide to take extra fights, because eventually you're going to need to be a very specific level anyways, if that makes sense. So you're not actually hurting yourself by getting EXP now. You're just saving yourself from having to do it later. Ideally, you do it later when it's faster. But you know, like I said, it's not monumental. It makes very little impact, to be honest. Do we want him? No, we don't. So we're gonna warp, get a full heal, then we're gonna go do Mushy. After Mushy, we're going to. Yeah, oh, the green mixtape. You have no idea. You're exactly right. That is a very good point. A lot of times, I'll be red, and I'm like, you know what? We just got to finish the run, because you never know. We took 2 or 3 extra fights in the first hour, and then it saves like 3 or 4 minutes in the last hour. So that is a very, very good point. You know what? We're actually going to do this first. We got to come up here and do this after Mushy, so we might as well do it before. But yeah, your splits are always skewed, and yeah, and your sum of best is a little bit shoddy. It's a little bit untrustworthy. But once you get used to the game, you can kind of have an idea for like. And you know, it's one of the things I really like about this game is that you can kind of remember, okay, I took an extra round of this up here and got this much EXP, so that I'll be able to skip this part or do this part differently and things like that. And you can kind of keep an eye on it. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Sum of best is kind of a risky situation, and it's not really a super great reflection of how fast the run can actually be. Sometimes it's a little skewed. So we're going to switch him to Blaster Stance. She's going to stay in that. He's going to be in that. I guess we're good. Go ahead and fight Mushy. So this is Mushriga. He's a big old boy. Oh, that was dumb. Right off the bat, we're making great decisions. Okay, Mind Warp. Okay, nobody got stuck with it. So he can confuse Taika, and if he does at any point in the fight, it's pretty much, the fight's pretty much over. Oh man, because Taika is rough. You don't want him stunned, because it'll just AoE your team down. It's pretty crazy. We do have a way to kind of knock stun off of Taika. We just have to punch him with Ive, but then we run the risk that we'll stun Taika because of the property of Ive's punch. So sometimes you're like, eh. You just want to not see the stun if possible, or the confuse if possible. It's really the best option. Okay, brilliant. This is actually going super well so far. And that huge fire breath right there is exactly why we need Taika and Nard to bond at level 2. You can't do that fight without it. No ifs, ands, or buts. But that was about as clean as Mushy can go. I've noticed that Mushy, ever since we incorporated the Benjo's gun, has become a lot easier. The exploding damage plus the fire trap from Ive working in combination actually makes a pretty big difference. So we're doing pretty well as far as time is concerned now, even after having to take that extra fight. So we're gonna warp just to be safe for EXP or for HP purposes. I love whenever you warp, those guys straight up leave the zone. They'll like run right out of the zone if you aggro them and warp fast enough. They just keep walking all the way to the entrance. It's super weird. But now we can go fight Adarin, and the reason we even do Mushy, the reason we do all this EXP is because of Adarin. She is a monster. And you used to, like before you took the elevator down to where the goblins are, and to rescue Taika, you used to have to fight Adarin there in the original version of the game. Now, Snowcastle realized just how difficult that was, having Gob King and then Adarin again later on, and they removed that fight and just made the other ones, like balanced out the difficulty on the other ones as a result. But this fight is crazy hard. Or at least it used to be. It's not as bad now that we have the mushy EXP. And another thing is, you know, we get free talents every time we level. So that makes a pretty sizable difference. So we're able to have just stronger characters across the board. He needs to be in this stance. All right, brilliant. Now we're ready. We're ready to fight her. Lately, I've been noticing with a couple of different strategies I've incorporated into this fight that is not as bad. But she beats you up this fight, man. Which is funny because later on we're pretty disgustingly overpowered and we fight and we murder her pretty seriously. But this fight can go a couple of different ways. What we're gonna do is try to get rid of the people in the back first. Okay, that's pretty good. Oh man, that was almost the dream start right there. Sometimes this fight starts really ugly and they get like 3 turns before you even get to do anything. But it's looking fine right about now. Nice. Okay, cool. So now we're gonna put Ive into this kind of pseudo support role. We'd rather have her providing heals than doing damage just because of how strong blind is in this fight. It's unfortunate we couldn't land the gouge. But this fight is going super well, actually. Like, I kid you not, sometimes she just spams AoEs and you die in like the blink of an eye, and it's no joke. And we want to try to make it out with nobody dying. You do get an EXP bonus called No One Died if nobody dies, it turns out. So it's always nice to have extra EXP. Man, we actually went a good while without seeing an AoE, so this has been a really favorable fight. That was a really good Adderin. He ended up saving almost 2 minutes. Pretty good. But yeah, so to your point earlier, Green Mixtape, I just saved 2 minutes in a 15-minute split, and it's nowhere near to gold because of how skewed the splits can sometimes be based on like where you decide to get your EXP from. But it's funny and I like it. In my opinion, it's one of the more endearing qualities of this game as a speedrun, because you never really know. Like every run is different, and you can kind of call your shots as you see them. Like if something goes a certain way, you can decide whether or not you want to react to it in kind or like what you want to do as a result. And every single run has just a few key differences. And the more you play and the better you get, make a more meaningful impact than in most speedruns where you just a rinse and repeat kind of situation. So yeah, exactly. Right here we actually got quite lucky, especially the fact that there's only one. And Taika went first. Wow. So we're gonna learn lightning from these little beetle guys, and only one of them saw us, and he saw us right away, and Taika went first. So that is perfect as you can ask for in that situation. And yeah, so what happens here is you are weak because Adderin just beat you up real good, and you have to come learn lightning. So what I'll do is I'll take a fight. If Taika is last, I will run away and just try it maybe later, or if there's another beetle we can fight, I'll do that then. But if Taika's last, we'll have to sit through all the turns of those enemies. We're low HP, so somebody's probably going to die. So we choose to, it helps a lot if he's first, second, or third, so that we can learn the ability, and then with the character whose turn is after him, run away. But that was the dream right there. We got one beetle, learned it, we split. You don't have to win the fight to learn it, since you learn it the second that you use the ability. So similar to Amory, where we just killed him and bounce. The same way with Taika. Yeah, Green Mixtape, exactly. That's a very well put. There's definitely no way to, there's no wrong way to get your EXP in this game. Certain spots are easier or harder based on like certain scenarios and situations, and just kind of based on what you feel like putting up with or whatever you think's best for you in that moment. Like sometimes I need EXP then and there to counteract a mistake I made early, and I'll decide to take an extra fight early as opposed to later on, because I need to skew the difficulty and things like that. But like you said, man, that's a great way to put it. There is so much that you can differ from run to run just to kind of see what's going to fit and what's going to work for that specific run that you're on. And that's cool, man. There's not a whole lot of games that I run where it's got that kind of dynamic, that dynamic change and you know, the way that it flows can always be a little bit different based on just RNG sometimes. Sometimes fights go a certain way and you gotta respond a certain way, and sometimes you are low on EXP or you got more than you need to and you can skip or do extra stuff, and it's pretty neat. Every single run I've ever done in this game has been a little bit different in one way or another. But now here we are. We have made it to Suvia. And we've regained Olia as part of our team. Now, earlier when we finished the Goblin section of the game, Olia hopped on a ship to go to Suvia, and we didn't hop on the ship because we needed to go and gain Taika still. We still needed to go fetch him. So she left and the rest of the team stayed. And now we finally met back up with her in Suvia, Nart and Eamon's initial destination, where Ive and Olia and Nart are all from. So we've finally reached like what would be a chill point in the game story-wise. There's a lot you can do here. Suvia is basically like the Lindblom of this game, if you're familiar with Final Fantasy IX. It's like the big mega city with lots to do, lots of side quests, lots of cool little extra content you can get under your belt, but we're going to skip all of that, ideally, because we want to go fast. So we're just going to do what's absolutely necessary, and we're going to go talk to this High Owl. She's basically the leader of this historical society. Ooh, real good. Sometimes she's like clear at the other end of the balcony, but she's being sweet right now. She's standing right by the door. And she's going to tell us something we need to know in order to find the last ancient machine part. Now, ancient machine parts are Olia's backstory. She's been traveling the globe trying to find all the parts to be able to rebuild one of these ancient machines. And they're basically really, really old tech robots. You can think of them in that. Oops, I went the wrong way. I do this every time. You can think of them in that fashion. What happens is they want to rebuild this robot so that it can translate and transcribe like a lot of these ancient scrolls and things that they have from that same era, the Valurian tablets, and so that's kind of like the Historian Society and Olia's goal right now is to get that done. And there's one last ancient machine part. We dug one up actually with Taika in the desert, and the Frog Boy had one when we rescued him. And we got one more to find, and it's actually at the end of this next dungeon here. And then we'll be able to put it all together, and it actually turns into our final party member, Pat. But we will cross that bridge when we come to it. So thanks to the new skip I found today, we're going to use Olia for this section. And this puzzle it's my least favorite area in the game, just because the enemies are kind of difficult for this level range. We haven't healed yet, so everybody's still at super low Adarin HP. But it's fine because you got to be really careful that you don't take encounters without initiating them yourself, so that you get the first turn and you can run away safely. And this game has its own puzzle. I mean, this dungeon rather has its own puzzle where you have to raise and lower the water at different points in order to be able to progress. Later on, there's actually these steam spouts, and it does exactly what it sounds like. It'll spout steam up. And if you run over it, it'll basically kill you, similar to heat stroke in the burning desert. And you'll have to, it'll push you back to a certain spot. You have to redo that section. However, the steam spouts have a really interesting quality in the way that they're designed. And whenever you take an encounter and you finish it, like the objects that you can interact with on the overworld will actually take a second to load. Sometimes they take even longer. They take a random amount of time, anywhere from like, half a second to like a 2 or 3 seconds. So we're going to be able to abuse some of those steam spouts that you shouldn't be able to get past without doing different parts of the puzzle by taking an encounter, immediately running away, and then trying to make it over that steam spout before it spawns. Sometimes it takes a few tries because, like I said, it's random how long it takes for those overworld objects to load. And sometimes you get them all first try. I haven't been able to figure out exactly what the properties are that dictate why it takes longer sometimes than others. And you'll kind of see an example of that here in a little bit as we get to that point of the game. But it's an RPG with a sewer section, as classic as it gets. What's going on, Tweener? I don't know if I said what's up, but I did see it, my dude. Keep that frog strong. How do you find out about all this? Research or trial and error? Trial and error mostly. Like, I just play around with the game and do stuff and go to sections that give me problems. Mostly error. That's true. A lot of stuff is found on accident, for sure. But I'm the only person who's routed this game, and because it is an indie game, there's not heaps of resources available for it online. And most of the information that does exist for it is for, like, the Festival of Magic, the original game. So most of the stuff I've had to kind of find and figure out on my own. Okay, so right there we got unlucky. Like I said, it takes a random amount of time. We're going to bait these guys out so we can get as close to that steam spout as possible. So right there would have been a great time to be able to run away from it. Usually you're supposed to turn a crank, but it requires its own puzzle. And there you go. So instead we get right past it. That is definitely not intended. I don't know if I would call it a glitch, but we're actually going to use that same mechanic right here, and it saves about a minute. Just came up with this today. Yeah, you know what, Purple Fairy Boy, it actually was totally on accident. So that steam spout you just saw me get past, I actually thought that was how you were supposed to get past it, was that it would go away on its own. But I was wrong, and it turns out I was doing something unintentionally. Then today, once I figured that out, but today when I thought about it, I was like, you know what, I wonder where else you can make use of that. So right here is actually another one. And this one works a very interesting way. We'll see if I can show it to you guys. Nice. Okay, so this steam spout's going to come up and kill me. But because the game wants you to be far away from that chest right there, it puts me on the other side of it. So whether or not you make it past it is irrelevant. So we skipped... Oh, come on, dude. That's really unlucky. Ooh, that was a little worrisome. But here is another one. You're actually supposed to be able... all three of these that I've just done, or I guess the last four, are all completely unintended. You're not supposed to be able to get past them this way. And there you go. We make it to the very end of the puzzle. That's actually the first time I've ever done that in a run, so you guys got to see it happen. It's pretty neat, though. I really like that trick. It cuts out a good chunk. Anybody who's familiar with the run, any of the people who watch my stream, are probably familiar with just how much it skips. Pretty neat little tech. I like it. I was here. But yeah, for anybody who's familiar with the run from my chat, it skips the puzzle section where you have to wait for the steam to line up in a correct order before you can cross. It skips that whole section, which you can sometimes screw up, and you lose even more time. So my username does indeed is Professor_Palmer. Why is it not reflect that on the actual overlay? Yeah, there you go. That is it, indeed. So right here we're getting Nart's frog skin, which I believe did in fact win the incentive war. So we're going to throw that bad boy on real quick. So now we have Princess Ive, Olia. Oh no, we don't get hers yet. Shaman Nart. There you go. Oh, okay, brilliant. Well, I appreciate that, Green Mixtape. I do, man. Thank you so much. So here's another a little trick I found, if you want to call it that. It saves about 5 or 6 seconds. You can just kind of clip out of bounds, or not really out of bounds, but you can clip off the side of this elevator right here. And as opposed to having to ride it all the way to the end, you can actually it's a little bit faster than having to ride the whole thing. We'll see if I can get it. If you don't get it, it's not the end of the world. Oh, unfortunately we didn't. But it's okay. Even if you get it on like the second or third try, it still breaks even, and it's worth showing because it looks funny. Yo, what's going on, Zane? How are you, my friend? There we go. We got it. Perfect. So you have to wait for that elevator to go all the way to the other side, run all the way down, and come back around. But instead, we can actually just bonk off the side of it, fall straight to the ground. On the other side where the elevator ends up, you can actually go out of bounds on that side too, but you get to about right here, and you fall to the ground below. So you can actually... I tested trying to be able to ride it all the way to the finish and being able to skip this whole section, but unfortunately, you can only make it about halfway. So it doesn't really... nothing meaningful comes of it. So we got the final machine part. Now we're going to take it to the High Owl, who is a very, very, she's the High Owl for a reason. Basically the leader of this whole historical ancient relic society. Real smart gal. Smart enough to apparently be able to assemble an ancient robot. So she's going to do that for us right quick. Or she's going to at least tell us, thanks for leaving the parts with me. I'm going to get it done. Come back later and then you can pick it up. And that's what we're going to do. But in between the time that we give it to her and pick it up, we will have to compete in the Festival of Magic in Zaber. There are 2 tournaments in this game, one in Zaber, one in Suvia. And they basically, like, the first time you do it, it's necessary for story purposes. But we're going to do the Zaber one twice, and we're going to do the Suvia one 3 times. And we're able to abuse EXP in there and get to a pretty high level. It's faster than anywhere else we'd be able to do it in the game. And we're going to end the Suvia section at like halfway through into 17. And then the final bosses in the game will be able to kill quick enough to get us up to 18 and 19. Amon's usually 18. But the rest of them are 19, and that's where we'll end the game, 1 level below the level cap. But as soon as we finish the Suvia grind, which is in about 30 minutes, give or take, we will... the last 60% of the content left in the game we do in less than an hour. Because Taika gets he steamrolls like really, really out of control. And you'll see that kind of as it happens a little bit later on. I guess Adarin 2 is the first real example of that, but getting a little ahead of myself first. We're going to warp on over and do the Zaber grind. And it's hard to explain in short, but these tournaments, they if you do them a certain way and you maximize EXP and you finish with a gold ranking, you will be able to get 1,000 EXP bonus as well as a few extra talents, and we absolutely want to make use of that. So we make these fights purposefully a little bit more difficult on ourselves, but we can do them a very specific way that they're actually not so bad. But after this first round I'm going to rearrange the party, and it's imperative that I do it at the exact moment that I do it, because we're going to need our party to be at a very specific bond structure level by the time we reach some of the later bosses in the game. So I can't forget to make sure that Amon and Taika at the end of this are bonded together. But here you're going to see Taika make quick work of most of these guys. As you can see, the guy in the top, he was stunned. Taika's ability Quake does have a small chance to stun people. And naturally, stun skips their turn, so fewer enemies taking turns is always ideal. So we're going to try and, we're just going to spam Quake on this first fight. And even though this is a grinding section, quote-unquote, oops. Naturally, you don't want to attack the people that are stunned, because you don't have to worry about them, but okay, sometimes I misclick, not a big deal. Because it is a grinding section, and saying the word grind makes it sound kind of redundant, or boring or what have you. I can assure you that all the grinds that we do in this game are anything but. They evolve pretty considerably. The fastest way to do them does change. We're going to do it like this. We're just going to pass these turns so we don't have to see their animations. Boom, there you go. Excellent. You also get an EXP bonus from taking no damage. So we were able to get outnumbered, a multiplier, and taking no damage in that fight, which is pretty favorable. In this fight, we want to get rid of these little, the cherubies, these little guys over here. They're a pain, so we'll try to kill them. Again, we're putting an emphasis on killing, like getting rid of the amount of enemies on the screen as opposed to spreading the damage out, so that Taika's damage will receive less of a reduction. So that if you're wondering why I'm choosing the targets that I'm choosing, sometimes it's just by accident and I'm not paying enough attention. But most of the time it's done purposefully. Okay, that Cherubi's not stunned, so we'll go ahead and kill it. There it is. And because I like to have the camera facing this way, because it makes the choosing of targets both on my side and the enemy side a little bit more fluid. You can obviously move the camera, and I'm sure you're thinking, oh man, well, it's kind of annoying. You can't actually see all the enemies on the screen. You can if you decide to move the camera around, but I like to have it at this angle, just because it's faster for me to be able to menu through the options on the screen. Some people have, I mentioned that because people have told me in the past, it's like, oh, you can't even see all the enemies, like, that would annoy me if I played. And I promise that I do that to myself on purpose, I assure you. This fight's actually super dope, because we can just do this. And it dies in an instant. We'll be using Bond with Taika on that fight both times we do it, because that fight they can slow you and they can really drag that fight out. So we're saving our stuff for very specific fights here. And in this fight, we're going to use this item called Sweet Dreams. Now, what it does is it puts them to sleep, and anything that's elemental won't wake them up. So we can actually use Electro Lance with Ive for free without waking them up. We can use Taika's abilities. Unfortunately, Eamon does have to pass his turn because his damage is explosive, and even if it is elemental, the explosive property will wake them up. But we, basically, without any risk, we can guarantee that we're going to get the not take any damage EXP modifier here. Let's see if we can... Oh! That was dumb of me. I figured I would risk it. Oh well, it's only like 50 EXP. It just speeds up the fight, not having to sit through enemy turns. I rolled the dice and I lost. But here we're going to, like I said, we're going to switch out these two, change a few talents around. We need to make sure... yeah, that's what we'll do. Oops. We need to make sure, absolutely sure, that Taika has Bonds of Battle and Energized. I'll explain those once I'm done with this menu, but we'll give her Resilience, we'll give her Armor. He'll get just Armor. Yeah, should be fine. Yep, cool. So the Bonds of Battle is an ability that or is a talent that whenever that character takes damage, they gain Bond a little bit. So it just basically makes Taika and Eamon's Bond connection gain a little bit more EXP, or gain a little bit more charge faster. And leveling up Bond actually works completely differently from the way EXP works. So EXP, obviously, the more enemies you fight, the more EXP you get. Pretty simple in that respect. But Bond actually is based on the amount of enemies you've killed. So it's like a set amount of enemies is going to level you up from one Bond level to the other. And by switching our party around right here, I can guarantee that Taika and Eamon are going to have full Bond by the second to last boss. And that's going to be imperative for the last boss, who has a DOT that we'll be able to avoid based on the passive ability that we get from their Bond. Oh, that was really nice. We got a bunch of good stuns. Cool. As you can see, we're starting to chew through stuff a little bit faster. The other ability I gave Taika was called Energize. It's also very, very important. Energize, the way that it works is anytime you use an ability, you have a small chance of gaining an Amory for free. And that's really good because we can... sometimes Taika can get an extra turn or two off when that thing procs. And it doesn't really hurt to have it equipped, even if it is a small chance. So we like that one for sure. I gave one to Nart called Double Turn? Double Turn. There's Quick Step and Double Turn. I get them mixed up all the time. But Double Turn is anytime an ability misses Nart, he's going to get 2 turns. Which is nice because it means that he's going to be able to buff twice. And that's really, really strong because of the way buffs in this game work. And then the ability we have on Olia is Quick Step, which increases her ability to, when she switches stances, she receives less of a weight penalty. And that's pretty much it as far as like the really important tiles that we have on right now. And every really important tile we get through story purposes. Taika has one on called Earthmaster that's pretty important, that increases the amount of damage that Earth-based spells do and reduces the amount of damage Lightning-based spells do to him, which allows us to lean on Quake. It's like our strongest spell outside of Curse, but we won't use Curse yet. We'll kind of cross that bridge when we come to it. Oh, come on, bro. You're killing me. And like I said, every single one of those abilities is something that you obtain organically. You don't have to do any extra farming. You can create tiles, like you can craft more, but we won't be doing any of that, fortunately. Oh, you'll notice that I'm using Olia's shout ability to be able to gather up all these enemies at once. And that's important because in order to get gold when you finish the tournament, you have to defeat every single enemy in every little phase all in one fight. That's the contingency, or that's like the prerequisite. On top of that, it gives us more EXP to do it in that way anyways, but like if I accidentally take 7 and I have to run away so that I can then guarantee to take 8, we're going to lose that 500 EXP bonus. Which doesn't gut you. It just sometimes is a little annoying since you're back. Now that the Chirby's dead, we can focus on the big boys. Okay, A and C. Because you can see the enemies in the turn order, we can effectively kill the ones that are coming up next and sit through fewer turns. So it's a... You really got to kind of get a feel for this game after a while. But it's not difficult to pick up, so if anybody's interested in it, it's a real pretty game. I'm the only runner, so you know, I've done the routing along with my chat, helping me out obviously, and things like that myself, with the devs' help a little bit here and there. But if you are interested in the game, I'd love to have you. It's a super fun game, and I could really use somebody to come up with some neat ideas as far as making it run faster. Right now, my current goal is to get this game to sub 3. We're not quite there yet. I do have some ideas. I just don't know if, you know, save time in one section might lose us time in another. So I'm going to have to test it all out, but we'll get there. I feel, yeah, you know what I'm talking about then, man. Yeah, sometimes that's just how it has to work, though, and I'm not upset. I love this game. I don't mind, but like I said, if anybody is interested, I would love to have you. No ifs, ands, or buts. No doubts about it. Very cool. So that is the end of the Zaber grind there. Now we're going to warp back to Suvia, and we're going to go die real fast. So what happens here story-wise is we go back to Suvia to say we won the tournament. You have to win the tournament at least once. Not even with gold, you just have to complete it to be able to go to the next story part of Suvia. But what we do here is we go into the Suvian tournament with an intention to compete, and we actually get met with Ichibo, who is one of the higher-ups in the Suvian Air Academy. And it turns out, we find out there that he's busted out like the most dangerous criminal out of jail and cursed him to basically be his like slave or his henchman or whatever. And, whoa, what the heck? How's that such a skewed split? I don't know. Weird. But regardless, he reveals like that he's the evil bad guy in all this, and it turns out that he's the one that hired the mercenaries to come attack us and acquire this artifact. But now that he's got us cornered, he kind of does some monologuing. He kind of gloats, and they're gonna beat our booties real good and take the artifact, and now it's no secret. He's no longer working as a double agent. He's full on admitted that he's the rotten guy in the story, but because this fight is unwinnable, we're actually just going to skip all our turns. There you go. And then get devastated. Yeah, so that's different. The run that Zimmy did was actually on the Festival of Magic version of the game. No, it's different for a few different reasons. The first one is the first reason is that the run that he did one run on the Xbox version, and when the Xbox version was first released in 2016, it had a bug in it that allowed you to spec your talents all the way up to max, like right off the bat, and that was patched out. Another thing is that it being a different version of the game, you had to be able to wait and farm up stuff towards the end of so you burn through everything because you're able to one-shot every boss in the game, and then you get to the end where you have to just farm for an hour and a half to get the fire spud required in order to get through the last little section. But since the remaster that's incorporated the increased battle speed, it's gotten rid of that plant requirement. There's actually certain bosses that aren't in one version that are in the other, and vice versa at certain points. Different elements of the story have changed, things like that. So the games have separate leaderboards as a result, as opposed to just separate categories. Yeah, unfortunately, that Xbox version with that bug on it was only available for a really limited time, so you're not able to do that run anymore. Unfortunately, it would be nice to, knowing what I know about the game now, having done a ton of runs and things like that, it would be interesting and fun to do a run on the old version of the game, but just waiting for those fire spuds would take like an entirely different reroute. So now we have Pat, the Ancient Machine. We've pieced him together, and we're going to use him for one thing and one thing alone, and that's to run fast. He runs really fast. We're actually going to steal his talents as well, though. He has some pretty good talents on him. Pat was kind of made to be a tank in this game. Well, not kind of. He was like intended to be a tank. However, when he comes into the party, he's level 10, and that's just too low for us to make any kind of use out of. So what we do is... Okay, that's accurate. So what we do is we strip him of his talents and just use him for his mobility, which is really, really good. Before I went to oh, I always forget this, man. One of these days, I'm not going to. But we bought a bunch of healing elixirs, so we're not going to be doing any more farming because we have stronger medicine that we're able to just purchase as opposed to having to farm all the way up to get that same medicine. Now we have to do a little enemy rush. It's not too bad. We just go through 3 fights. Oops, I didn't need to do that. We go through 3 fights of the first enemy is just 2, and then it's 4, and then it's 6, and then 8, I believe. But they're quite simple, especially now Taika's starting to really heat up. And as long as we have Bond on Eamon and Taika in the final fight, we can get rid of that one really quick. And then we go fight Adarin another time. But she's a huge pushover because she is so because Taika is so strong, and we have Curse now, which I did use earlier, but I didn't talk about just because it's hard to like appreciate just how powerful it is until you see it like the way it's supposed to be used, or the broken method that we use it in. But I'll preface that by saying, in this game, damage is capped out at 9999, like a lot of games. However, Curse works a very specific way in that it actually puts 4 DOTs on the enemy, and the damage is checked in 4 different instances for each one of the DOTs. So instead of it being like curse a spell that does these DOTs, does 1 instance of damage, it actually does 4 separate instances all at once, which allows you to kind of bypass that damage cap, and it'll allow us to do way more damage than just 10,000 in a single turn. And it allows us to shred some of the late game enemies. Pretty disgusting. And another reason that Curse is so good is because the way that it works is Taika will cast it, and it'll put those DOTs on the enemy. Now, until that enemy takes its turn, it's not going to... until the enemy takes its turn, it's not going to do damage. And when it does take its turn, it then checks Taika for his magic stat at that point. So that means that, you know, if say Taika gets Curse off right off the bat, and Nart is able to get off 4 magic buffs before the enemy takes its turn. Well, it will check him and do the damage based on the magic stat he has at that moment, which would be with those 4 buffs, as opposed to you know, the damage that it would have done without it, which is going to be obviously significantly less. Okay, cool. So it's pretty neat in the way that alt checks itself out. Yeah, I guess we'll do it like this. So you can push a lot more damage than you think because of that mechanic. And the magic bonus, it increases by, like, it loses value the more you cast it, but because the damage is going up, it actually balances itself out, and it's always going to be doing something beneficial, which is really, really nice. The way that it works is magic bonus, the first stack, adds about 37% damage, and then it goes down to 31, then 27, 24, 21, 16, and it works its way down in that respect from that point forward. But as a result, though, you can just keep stacking it and stacking it. And what we're doing right now, you'll notice that I'm putting resilience and armor tiles on Nart and Olia. And those are basically, resilience is magic defense, and armor is physical defense. And I'm pretty simplistic, I know, but the difference is those 2 defensive tiles, on top of giving you obviously defensive stats, they also give you speed. So the tankier you become, the faster you become. And the more damage you put on a character, the slower they are. Now, the nice thing about that is that we're able to have Nart be super fast and Taika be super slow on purpose. So we can get Nart to cast like a ton of magic buffs, so that by the time Taika takes his turn, he's received, like, you know, all these different buffs. I think I'm actually going to save this for the Subia drive. No, I shouldn't. That was dumb. We can use it in Adarin. That's okay. Usually we want to hope that Taika receives a bunch of damage during these fights so that we have Bond by the time we get here, but it just didn't pan out that way, unfortunately. So we'll be able to use it in the next fight. Loses us a little bit of time over what is ideal, obviously, but not the end of the world. Definitely doesn't cost us to run or anything crazy like that, so... So now we're done with that. We're going to move on. Now we get Ive's Captain Slinger here, which is super good. It increases all ranged attack damage, basically. So we're going to equip that. Oops. We want, actually, Ive and Aim in different stances, but it doesn't matter here, because we'll have Taika. This is the second Adarin fight, and the last time we'll be fighting her in the game. You used to fight her, like I said, in the Festival of Magic. You fought her an extra time. In this one we don't, thankfully. Because she's not very nice. Okay. Neat. Okay. So I'm gonna lay Curse down on Taika real quick, and you're gonna see how much damage it's gonna do. Look at that, disgusting damage, and it applies 4 DOTs that work that proc twice. Okay, neat, pretty good fight there. Saved about 30 seconds or so. But you can see just how disgusting that ability is. It rips through people. And obviously, the stronger you get, the higher your magic stat, the more magic buff stacks that are on you are all going to contribute to that as well. And it's only going to get stronger. But so it basically puts 4 DOTs on. Each one lasts 2 turns. So the enemy will take 2 turns, and both times it'll receive all the damage from those DOTs at that point before it wears off. And it's nasty. We shred through some of the later game enemies, and no joke, like there's a train that we fight towards the end of the game that we can beat in under 20 seconds if we get a decent turn order. And like it's funny because oh wow, we got unlucky. So this lady randomly decides to move around, and right there she decided to move in front of us, and we gotta wait till she moves again. So we'll use this time to do some menuing real quick. Oh, she's still there. All right, come on. She'll move after a while. Sometimes she decides not to move, and she'll stay in place. There we go. What a silly gal. Yeah, everything is goobing on my end, my friend. We are about 3 or 4 minutes behind world record right now, so we should be more than decently under estimate. I'm going to see if I have any extra money here. Oh, yeah, I do. Excellent. So I'm able to buy a few more of those, which are the strongest healing items in the game that we'll be utilizing. And I'm actually going to warp right here. So one thing that's easy to miss if you're not paying attention is at the end of the Adarin fight, you don't actually get a full heal. So you can go into this next Suvia tournament at like pretty low HP. Even though you end in the hospital, you're not actually healed. Which is like one of the more unique situations in the game that takes place. Oh, we did get Olia's skin now, just from that when we obtained Pat. So I will equip that as well, and we'll have all 3 people with the proper skins on. And this is basically just a tutorial on how Pat's ability works. We don't actually care, because Pat's kind of useless outside of being able to run hella fast, which is what we'll be using him for. I need to make sure these guys are in the correct stance. And once I run into this tournament, I need to... once we run into this tournament, I need to move some things around, because this restream session has been really chill. Well, I'm glad, man. I'm glad to hopefully make it a little easier on you than worst case scenario. We're all chilling. Chat is being cool and vibing with me, so I appreciate all you guys. But as soon as we start this fight, I guess I'll explain it this way. So in the first tournament, you're only allowed to use tier 1. You're only allowed to use tier 1 ammo. But in the second tournament, you're only allowed to use tier 2 ammo. Now, Snowcastle, when they designed it, they were worried that maybe you wouldn't have that ammo on you. So as a safety precaution, what they did was they actually give you a set amount of ammo to use in the tournament. When the tournament's over, you lose it. But as a result, this is actually the last time we're going to be even using aim and an eye for damage. So because of that, and then it works the same way in the Zaber grind too, they give you ammo if you don't have any. We end up having like next to no ammo, so the game gives it to us by itself, and that allows us to not have to do the farming. So we completely route out farming by just buying the medicine that we're going to need for the remainder of the run, and leaning on this safety mechanic that the game has in it, so that you don't get stuck or bodied in a tournament without saving because you ran in with no ammunition. So that is a nice little thing that's easy to miss, that does save us a good deal of time by, the fact that it gives you ammunition means we don't have to sit around and wait for all the plants to supply the amount that we're going to need, which I used to not know because I always went in with an excess. And then one day I went in without having done the farming, and I was like, oh no. And then I realized that I had ammo still, even more actually than I would have had otherwise, and I realized how the mechanic works, and now we're able to completely avoid having to, we want to use it, and we'll do it on this guy. Oh, dang it. We're able to completely avoid having to do any of the farming, which is nice. It speeds up the game dramatically. I'm not sure if the grinds in the Festival of Magic work the same way in the original game. So what we're going to do right here, I forgot to do it on my first turn. That was a mistake on my part. Is we're actually going to heal the enemies here, because the guys in the front are actually take damage from heals because they're undead. And we need to get rid of them as quickly as possible. Obviously, it speeds up the fight to have fewer enemies, but at the same time, they can apply some slows, they can sleep you, they can zombify you, which means that you take damage from heals as well. So they're kind of a pain. And then the guys in the back, the way they work, is anytime that you do elemental damage, for 3 turns, they didn't become resistant to whatever that elemental damage was. Which, that's part of the reason we get lightning on Taika, so that we can alternate through all those abilities, and we'll always have something to be able to cast. Another reason, though, is like later on in the game, we'll use lightning specifically to be able to kill some of the enemies that are a little bit tougher in the later part of the game. Oops, almost cast it again. After I just spent all the time talking about it. Cool. And you can see just how fast Nart accumulates bond. And it's pretty quick. Because his ability, magic and attack focus, hits everybody, so you get 3 instances of bond gain. That went alright. Now this next fight is what I save my bond on Taika and Eamon for. This fight is the worst and the slowest by far. Cool. We'll do it like that. So we can almost one-shot this entire fight with Eamon's Spud Blast, and then we can finish it off with Taika. Okay, cool. So we'll just do it in reverse order. There we go, boom. What's going on, Panda? You heard correct, my friend. Scrub indeed. In fact, I would even go as far as to say the scrub. Maybe even the best scrub, or the worst. I don't know what actually, how that would work. This fight is pretty simple. You want to get rid of the quad dragons with Eamon, which are the guys in the back. They take a lot of damage, so they're usually pretty easy to kill. And then obviously, like I mentioned earlier, the fewer enemies on the screen means that Taika's going to do more damage. The Alpha and the Omega Scrub. Oh man. Indeed, my friend. It's good to see you, Panda. Hopefully you're doing well today. Ground Frost that you're seeing get cast right here, we're actually going to use in the next fight against the next enemy. It just means that people who attack with melee can't actually attack. You can only attack with ranged attacks. And we're going to go pick up Ground Frost and use it. In this next fight, there's a mage and a guy attacks with a sword. Now, when we Ground Frost, it's going to make that guy with a sword not be able to attack for 3 turns. And then we're going to use Taika's Curse on the mage, so she dies in a single turn. And that way we take way less damage and this fight goes a lot faster. That's the only turn that mage is going to get off. Boom. Taika is busted, man. Curse is quite disgusting. So as you can see, super quick, real easy. We're going to do that 2 more times. We did get a new ability called Quick Rest that we are going to put on Taika now, but... Windy as a son of a gun, huh? Hey, Zojalix, thanks so much, my friend. Hopefully I said your name correctly. You have a great rest of your day. It's been a pleasure having you. And thanks so much. Like I think I speak for everybody when I say I appreciate you watching the marathon as a whole. Hopefully you have a good one, man. So here, we're going to do some equipment rearranging, give him magic, we're going to give him quick rest. Now, like I said, we're just putting defensive stats on Eamon. On Ive and Nart in order to speed him up. It is the final run of the event. But what has been a fantastic run, a fantastic event up until this point, so... I'm honored to be able to finish it out strong. Hopefully, people enjoy it. I always open up with lightning on the first turn of this because these guys are a little bit more weak to it, and if it lands the DOT, it usually will kill whatever it hits. As you can see right there, it just did. So for the first turn, it's pretty safe to cast. It usually means that you're going to end up with maybe 1 or 2 dead enemies, which mean that the next time you cast a spell, it's probably going to finish off what's left. Well, thank you, Green Mixtape. I appreciate it, man. I'm happy to showcase this game in whatever way that I can. It's a super cool game. And this is, I've actually, the first marathon I ever ran it in was on Tuesday. And then I ran in one Thursday as well. And now this one on Sunday. So I've been trying to get it into as much as I can before limit break comes around. Again, we're going to heal these guys. We're going to try to get rid of them with these. Yeah, oh man, I couldn't agree more, Green Mixtape. I think that there's a lot of really great indie devs doing a lot of really big things right now, and it's easy to sleep on them because they're not AAA, they're not getting the exposure. But man, I tell you what, there's a lot of pretty good indie RPGs especially out there that are definitely worth the money, and this one being one of the few for sure. As you can see now, everybody has 5 Amory, and that means that they've reached max Amory, max Bond. Having 5 makes a pretty big difference, especially on Taika. If Energize procs, it'll allow Taika to have technically 6 Amory, because it'll give you 1 after you use Curse, which will allow us to curse and not have to rest the turn immediately after. Oh no, I'm an idiot! Oops. I casted the same element, and it resisted it. Feels bad. But those 2 guys are actually stunned from that second cast of Curse, so it's not going to hurt us too bad. Oh, come on, Eamon. You're killing me, buddy. It's okay. It happens. You take yourself too seriously. Another really neat thing is that that comes from Bond is what is it? I can't remember exactly. So Ive and Nart, their bond, I'm trying to remember what level it is. It might actually be max level. But they get an affinity that anytime Ive casts First Aid, it has a 25% chance of landing haste as well. So you're going to see me cast a lot of First Aid on people, even when they're full HP. You're going to wonder why is he doing that? That guy doesn't need to be healed. And that's just because I'm trying to get that haste to proc to speed up certain fights. It really helps to have Nart and Taika in that order, hasted, because it makes a big difference on like how much magic buffs you can cast and stuff like that. Let's see if we can get a lightning proc on anybody. Oh, we did. Nice. What's going on, man? How are you? That was a pretty clean fight right there. Lightning really helped us out. So theoretically, I am working on a route that only makes you do the Suvia grind twice, whereas we're gonna have to do it three passes of it. This is the tail end of the second, and it would save a little bit of time, or it would save about 5 minutes, at least, in not having to do the grind anymore. However, it might then lose time and how much difficulty then the bosses after then are, if that makes sense. I'll actually just heal here. Ooh, that might have been a bad decision. We don't know. I guess we'll cross it first when we come to it. Are Pikmin meat or vegetable? I would have to assume that they're vegetables, right? They've got to be just like plants, you know? Like that's just what the science tells me. I'm no scientists, but I would have to assume that they're just like giant lettuces. What could go wrong? Yeah, cutting EXP out of this game is something you gotta do very carefully. Like, it might save 5 minutes to cut the 3rd round of Subia out, but we might get bodied by the very next enemy by just that 1 level difference. Well, you're wrong, really? So they have meat to them? That just doesn't sound like it makes sense to me. Oh, we're gonna give her resilience twice. We're gonna give him might. And might. Give him resilience. We actually have more resilience tiles than we usually do. That's pretty good, though. That's never a complaint. They're a vegetable. I just said that! Oh, so I'm not wrong because I said they're vegetables. I'm wrong because I said they look like lettuces. Yeah, that's fine, though. Carrots, it's all the same. You know what I mean. Somebody really, I feel like that's one of those weird questions you ask yourself at night when you're trying to get to sleep and it keeps you up at night for no reason. All in all, I think we can all agree that regardless of what Pikmin are, Olimar is the worst character in Smash Ultimate. Carrots and I meant that they're vegetables as opposed to the meat. The other choice, which was meat. Boom. Lots of good EXP right there. It's 3 a.m. Our Pikmin meat or vegetables. That really is. This really is. That's what it is. Solimar. Nah, man. He is rough to play against him. Watch. Alrighty, let's have a go at this. Unfortunately, we're not at the bond level that we would like to be, so we're just going to have to do this the old-fashioned way. That's what I get for using heal in the final fight of the last one, but it's okay. We got a couple of good stuns off here, so it's not going to really lose us any real time. As long as we don't get slowed on Taika, this should be pretty fine. Nice. Okay, cool. Very nice. Oh, really, man? Congratulations. That's pretty impressive. Oh, really? You can't grab any Pikmin? That's funny. Man, that would be so funny. That sounds like something you would play with your homies when you're just chilling at the house and people have been drinking and want to play Smash for a couple hours. Okay, so this one more fire should be the end of it. Excellent. I can understand that, Oblivinator. There's a lot of times where I'm running a game. I did it for a long time with a game called Parasite Eve, where I ran it for so long that it just started to eat at me. Oops. I guess it doesn't really matter. You should kill him regardless. Okay. And it just gets frustrating once you only got a little bit. You know, there's not a whole lot of things you can do better, and you're just grinding it out for, like, minuscule time saves. I can feel that, for sure. Sometimes it's nice to take a break or to take things less serious, for sure. Okay, so we're getting pretty strong in Eamon. You can kind of tell where Eamon's at attack-wise based on how much he can do with that middle dragon back there. Why does this man have so many potatoes? So I did explain that for a second. He has so many potatoes because the game actually gives you a set amount of ammunition when you enter these tournaments so that you don't accidentally enter with no ammo and screw yourself up. So we're able to abuse that in order to have tons of potatoes on hand without actually having to farm any of them up. Pretty neat. Brilliant. They're both stunned. So we can actually just pass our turns. We don't need to sit through animations. There it is. And we're gonna save, it looks like probably 2 minutes, maybe, give or take. Our Bulborbs meet. Yeah, Buff Pig. Yeah, his name is, he's a hog bunny. So like a rabbit and a pig mixed together. And yeah, he is the truth for sure. We actually have a few pretty dank Nart emotes in my chat as well, like on FFC. Nice. Curse is starting to do some real big boy damage. Okay, so he'll skip another turn. We should be able to kill him before we take any damage. Perfect. And that is going to be the end of the grind section, and we're doing really good time-wise. So now we're going to just chew through the remainder of the game. Which, when I say chew through the remainder, I mean really chew through it. We're going to finish, like, up until this point, we've done probably 40% of the content in the game. We're going to finish the last 60% in less than an hour. We're going to do it in about 45 minutes, 50 minutes. And that's just because we can lean on Taika and blaze through things we really should have no business one-shotting or killing really early, quickly. So after we're done with that, we move on. We just start mushing through stuff. The first thing we're gonna do is Trimblebone. He's an undead, and he's located in the swamp, or right outside of the swamp. We're gonna warp to the swamp to get to him. And it's funny, the Trimblebone is actually when you know, this game was This game was a Kickstarter campaign, and one of the backers on the initial Kickstarter campaign was this 10-year-old, and he drew a picture, and he sent it to Snowcastle, and they actually prettied it up and put it in the game, and it's what this enemy that I'm about to fight, Trimblebone, he was based off that drawing of the 10-year-old did. And it's a really cool, like, if you can, they posted the picture on Twitter a few days ago. And you can actually see like the likeness of the drawing and what the end result was, and it looks really, really cool, man. Yeah, it was initially a Kickstarter, and they put together the Festival of Magic. Then once they started to do pretty well, and the game started selling and the reviews were positive, they were able to then put what money they had made into remaking the game in an effort to make it better before they moved on to the second game in the series, which is going to be Earthlock 2. The devs do plan on making this game a trilogy, which would be pretty sweet. Granted, people ask me all the time what the time frame is. Sometimes they watch me do runs, and they come into my chat, or in the marathons I've run, they've come in and said what's up sometimes as well. But they don't have a time frame on it yet, so it could be a little while. Could be, you know, I don't know where they're at progression-wise, but I cannot wait for it to come out. I'll be one of the first to pick up a copy. One of the first, boys. So we should have changed stances here, but I was not paying attention. It's all right. So this guy is pretty simple. You don't have to worry too much about him. What you need to do is just make Taika do damage. That's really it. And casting First Aid with Ive helps substantially because you can land that haste on occasion. Another property of First Aid is that it gets rid of bleed, which some of the enemies, like this guy right here, as well as Franir, who we fight right after, they do. They apply bleed. This indeed is the drawing that the 10-year-old made, and they took him from the game, or they took him from the drawing, and they made it into that character. If you go to Twitter and go to Snowcastle Games, you can scroll down to, like, I think they tweeted it yesterday or the day before. You can actually see they posted the picture of Trimblebone and the drawing that they initially received by their backer. Yeah, it's really sweet. It's super cool. They're a cool bunch of guys, man. They're a pretty small company, but they're real personable. If you contact them for help or whatever to ask questions, they'll always tweet you back. They're a cool group. Actually, I'll be like I said, running this game at RPG Limit Break in May, which is like an in-person event, and they'll be on the voice comms with me commentating as well. So they're gonna join me for commentary on that when that event does come around. So that'll be a ton of fun. But here we're moving on to Franir's Lair. We're going to touch this save stone. because we're actually going to utilize this area to skip the next area. So after we beat Franir at the end of this dungeon, we're going to come back here and gather up Amory so that we don't have to then do the really long puzzle in the next area and gather the Amory that way. Oh, he landed in a really bad spot. I'm actually going to run away real quick. I want to bait this guy out a little bit more because when he dies, that blue Amory is going to land right on top of that receptor. And it's going to be really hard to... it's going to be really, really hard to pick up to utilize the yellow Amory on that receptor without accidentally picking up the blue. You'll see what I mean when we get to it. I've had it happen before where I end up losing like 30 seconds because I got to run back and forth. So we don't want this enemy. Usually we get aggro to both of them, but that actually works just as well. Oops. Why is he in that stance? Oh, because I forgot to switch him. Duh. So we're going to have to take this fight now because I screwed up. That's alright. We can just run from it. One thing that is kind of hard to get used to is the switching of characters is sometimes a little clunky. You have to like real quick flick of the analog stick. You hold R1 and flick the analog stick really fast to switch between people. And sometimes you can switch to the wrong character and enemies can catch up to you in the time that you're fumbling around with the controls. It happens to me at least a couple of times a run. Nice. Like I said earlier when I was talking about Amory's, we want to be able to... We just want to kill the Amory itself and not the other enemies in the fight. So we don't worry about them. And we will be picking up a chest in this next area, but the only chests we're picking up in the game usually are because they contain a magic tile. So as you can see right here, this is what I was talking about. If the blue is right on top of this and I go to interact with this, I'll just pick up the blue and get rid of the yellow and have to run all the way back to the other side and get the yellow again. So we pick up that chest because it has a magic tile in it. There's actually a really limited amount of magic tiles scattered throughout the game. And we need them really badly. So we will be picking up all the ones that we can get. And unlike the talents that you get like Bonds of Battle and Earthmaster and stuff like that, you can't actually craft straight up like skill talents. So anything that gives attack or magic or things like that, you actually just have to obtain. They can't be crafted. Unfortunately, that's the case. Because if it wasn't the case, we could just make a ton of magic tiles and make Taika just blow stuff up even faster than we do now. But alas, balance, you know, what a pain. I do have an SSD in this, and this is on the PS4. So the PC is probably a little bit faster naturally, but this game actually has really fast loads. So I can't imagine that it would be more than a minute across the board faster. Oh, really? Dang, he's already way stacked out. Means we picked up more. He needs to be changed. All right, cool beans. We're ready to do Franir. Now this guy can sometimes be a breeze and really fast, and sometimes he just drags the fight on. You never really know, but we'll find out. So we're gonna try to get first aid, first aid's haste to stack on Taika and Nart. The haste either way would be super ideal, but you know, you can't always get super lucky. Bummer. It's a 20% chance, so we're getting a little unlucky in the grand scheme, but it's okay. Alright, cool. So this fight is over. Neat. Good fight. Pretty good fight. We did save time there as well. So we're actually only 1 minute and 27 seconds behind my PB. That's really favorable. This is the best pace we've been on in a marathon yet. But there's no time to be excited because this next guy is going to require a little bit of prep. We're going to have to save before him. Now, this next boss, up until a couple months ago, was like you had like a 20% chance of getting him first try. Like he was an absolute, just a monster. Now I have a strategy that allows me to be able to beat him 80% of the time first try. Sometimes he really still surprises you. But we're going to save real quick just for like some 1% chance soft lock or something that I'm sure exists somewhere. And we're going to work to Suvia. Now we're going to head to the Twisted Guardian, who's in the Tower of Dur. Now the Tower of Dur is the area that I mentioned earlier that we're going to skip all the puzzle in. Skipping all the puzzle saves anywhere from probably about 7 minutes total. Because we do have to there's a setup that goes into skipping it. Like we got to go and get the Amory from other places. But at the same time, it's well worth it. You save a ton of time not having to do the puzzles there. But on the way to the Tower of Dur, we're going to stop at the underwater station, and we're going to tap the save stone there. That way, as soon as we're done at the Tower of Dur, we can warp to the underwater station and head to Karba, or not Karba right away, but the Anvirium Cathedral, and then Karba. It's basically the other side of the world where you do like the last couple of fights in the game, and it's like a frozen tundra type area. Pretty neat. But on the way to the Tower of Dur, after we do this, we're going to go actually fight the third barnacle in the game for a good old fat level. He is a joke. Like, oftentimes he dies before he gets to even do anything to you. So that's always fun to watch and fun to see. It's neat to see Curse just blow things up. Alright, cool. One time I did come in here, thought I tapped it and I left, and then later on I went to go warp and I didn't have it. I had to run all the way. It was annoying. But just to catch you up a little bit on the story and why we're fighting all these bosses all of a sudden, is so Ichibo and Bren was the fight that I did earlier that you could not win. And the move that insta-killed you is called Devastate. And it sets everybody to a maximum of 2 HP, and then it does like a couple thousand worth of damage. So in order to be able to be immune to Devastate's HP cap, we have to craft this shield talent. And in order to do so, we need a key item from all the bosses in this game, or all the bosses you're seeing me fight here. As you can see, just a ton of good old damage here. And there you go. He dies real quick and easy. And then right over here is the Tower of Dur. So right off the bat, I'm going to use the red Amory that I carried from Franir's Grotto. Right after I defeated Franir, I got more red before I warped out. And that's so that I could charge this without having to actually do the puzzle. So the red charge you get from the left side, I believe? From the right side, which takes like 2 or 3 minutes. And now we're going to warp back to Franir's lair and get the blue charge. And then we're going to warp back to Tower of Dur and use that. And then the yellow charge is actually really fast. But doing this is something that I kind of came up with, not really recently, but you know, it was one of the newer strats that I do now. That's for sure. And it saves a whole boatload of time. It's really nice. On top of that, you have to fight a bunch of stuff. It's easy to have things like bleed time because they take longer than they should. And it just cuts out a lot of the guesswork on top of just outright saving a handful of minutes. So pretty neat strategy. And it's funny, the way that I kind of thought about this was one of the devs actually hit me up and was like, you know what? I don't think we patched this thing that allows you to carry this Amory to places you shouldn't be able to carry it. And once he showed me how that worked or explained that to me, it made me think about like where else you could exploit Amory without, you know, get it from where you shouldn't be getting it from. And it led to that. Now, I don't know of many devs that would tell you, hey, we forgot to patch this thing in our game. You should see if you can use it to go real fast. Well, that's Snow Castle for you. Good people. I do know the devs, indeed. I do. They're really, really cool people. I mean, I met them because I played the game, not because I know them personally. When I first started speedrunning it, I hit them up. And I said, listen, you know, I'm trying to speedrun the game. Is there anything that you know as far as like version differences or tips you can give me or anything like that? And they sent me a few things, and one thing led to another, and we talked a little bit more and more about the game. And I just mentioned a little bit ago, at RPG Limit Break, they're going to be doing commentary with me during my run, so that'll be tons of fun. But real quick, we have to go to Ive and get rid of, give her a few might tiles, and give them to Eamon, or give the armor to Eamon. And then we gotta change Eamon's equipment to the old blaster. Okay, brilliant. Now, the reason we did that is because we need Eamon to be faster in this next fight. I guess we can do might and hurt. We'll do cloak. Do agility. Eamon needs cloak as well. Yeah, they are the ones. They were like, "Hey, listen, you should use Pat. He runs really fast." And I was like, "What?" And then the very first time I tried. Sure enough, it does end up saving a bunch of time. Like, he does run fast. It saves like a couple minutes. So they've, together, like, I kid you not, Snow Castle and like the advice they've given me on time save has probably saved like 40 minutes in the whole run. So pretty substantial amount. But this guy right here has to be done a very specific way. Oh, and this is not a good turn order. So we want him to attack Nart or Taika first. Okay, that's not ideal, but it's not the end of the world. So what we're going to do is actually... just a stab. Quake. So the way this fight works is he's going to cast a DO... or a, like a what would you call that? Like a... He's going to use a debuff. And once every single character has received that debuff, he is going to do an AoE that pretty much one-shots everybody. But in order to dodge being able to receive that debuff, we put a couple of people in what's called cloak mode. Eamon and Ive both have access to cloak, and we put them in that so that they can't receive the DOT. Now, after he DOTs everybody who he can, he'll just start randomly attacking, so he does have an opportunity to knock you out of it. Okay, cool. So we need to heal everybody. And hope that he doesn't stick it on her next. He did, okay. So what we need to do here is just push damage as fast as possible. And hope that Taika doesn't die. Okay, brilliant. No big deal, we're hanging in there. We have to just make sure that we throw a big elixir on Taika. He's got to live a couple more turns. Okay, excellent. Sometimes this fight gets away from you. Oh, brilliant. Oh, that's not going to save him. Ooh, there it is. Twisted Guardian is down. Amazing. Woo! So not the, not the prettiest TG, but a TG nonetheless. And first try is always nice. Like, you expect to lose time there. We lost about a minute. But anybody from my chat can attest to just how awful that guy is. He's probably the worst boss in the entire game. We used to have so many runs that were on world record pace that ended up getting like an 8th try Twisted Guardian until I was able to like figure out a strat one day that kind of allows it to be at least somewhat consistent, even if it is, even if it isn't like super quick. We used to just wing it and hope that that he wouldn't DOT the correct people, and then we could kill him fast enough. So as you can imagine, based on how ugly that fight just was there, what it would look like without the safety that we were able to provide ourselves for a few turns at the very least. It was almost impossible. It was so bad, dude. It was awful. It was so bad. I was like, you know, this game's never gonna get into a marathon unless I can figure this out. So at the cost of a minute and 14 seconds, because that was a slow fight. Usually you lose about 30 seconds or so. So at the cost of that, the game then becomes marathon viable. You know, that's a worthwhile trade, and your runs finish, which is another worthwhile trade. So definitely not complaining. I'm pleased with it. Because yeah, like they might be memeing in chat right now, but it really was like 20% of the time you got it first try. And if you got it first try, you were never gonna beat your PB because you could be 5 minutes ahead and then get an 8th try and be like, well, you know, I'm running against a first try Twisted Guardian. Feels bad. But this area is pretty simple. We just do a couple of these ground puzzles. Fortunately, I've played the game. Yeah, it really was. It was like, we're 4.5 minutes ahead. And it was like, but we have Twisted Guardian. It would be like, okay, but what were you after Twisted Guardian? 2 minutes behind. Like, that was what mattered. If you were ahead after Twisted Guardian, you had a real chance. And I'm glad that it's not like that anymore. It is a much more enjoyable experience, for sure. Still a difficult fight, but in this area, what we're going to have to do is fight a couple of enemies and do these puzzles along the way. Now, lightning is very important. If you don't get lightning before the Suvia grind, or you know, like on your way to Suvia for the first time, it's imperative that you at least get it on the way to Twisted Guardian. Because these guys are way weaker to lightning, and they're kind of resistant to everything else. So lightning does quick work. And also the DOT, if it lands, it does work as well. So we're going to fight 3 fights. The first one is going to be this one. The next one's going to have 6, and the final one's going to have 8. Now, on the one with 8, we're actually just going to use Bond with Taika and one-shot it, because otherwise it takes forever. That guy actually, see the top one, how he's got like that little sign above his head? Right next to it says 2. That means in 2 turns he's going to explode. So we're just going to ignore him. If we don't kill him by then, he's just going to kill himself, so it's not a big deal. That was a pretty good fight. But those guys are immune to stun and everything, so Quake is kind of worthless in that situation. I've actually done some of the math, and Lightning is actually the highest DPS spell in the game. If I could get the Lightning talent, it might actually outpace Quake, even in the tournaments. However, like, you would have to scavenge a whole lot of ingredients to be able to do that, and that would probably lose more time than it would end up saving. But there's a lot of things I'm curious about testing that one day I'll probably get around to, especially now that I have a couple months before Limit Break. I'm going to test a lot of stuff that I wanted to get around to and never really taken the time to do. We're going to kill this guy first. Like I said, primary focus is you want to get rid of enemies so that the damage is less reduced. These guys will stack bleed, as you can see. So, oh, haste, nice. Oh man, you know, I'm not a big fan of doing math in order to get runs to work, but I've mathed this game out quite a bit. Very cool. You min-maxer. Yeah, exactly. Man, you should see my Ni no Kuni 100% route. It's like this encyclopedia of a spreadsheet. It's so awful, dude. I hate it. That run sucks, dude. Oh no. Okay, please go away. Alright, cool. I screwed this up. We need to switch to Olia. Oh, nice, we got it just in the nick of time. That was really bad movement on my part. I've seen it. Yeah, my notes for Ni no Kuni 100% are awful. It's a 36-hour run, so that's gonna happen, but it's especially bad, I promise. Alrighty, because Nart didn't get a buff we weren't able to kill these guys right away, but now we have. They're dead. We can move on to Sentient Train. Oh, it is so fun. I mean, and it's fun to do. Don't get me wrong. I enjoy Ni no Kuni Hundo. It's not that the run is difficult or overly challenging. It's just that you got to try to not fall asleep for 36 hours. Like, that's the most that's literally the most difficult part about it. So before we go in here, I'm actually just gonna use an item or two. Just to be safe. This next guy is a pushover. Like, he's super easy. However, he can sometimes get 2 turns early on and shoot missiles at one person with low HP, and then somebody's not getting the EXP they need. So, because it's a marathon and it only takes a couple of seconds, I might as well heal people just to be safe. Oh man, something like that. Something like that. Man, I love Ni no Kuni, don't get me wrong, but I don't like not sleeping for 2 days. I'm sure we'll revisit it at some point. There's 2 hours of free time save in the current 34.5 hour world record because I had to leave. Okay, so this is not ideal, but the fact that Nart goes is okay. So we're going to actually have to rely on a little bit of damage from Eamon and Ive. It's alright though. Alright, cool. Sentient Train is down. So as you can see, heck of a fight. Real easy. Suplex the train. Oh, yeah. No doubt. The Solaceum, it's like so hype, and then for the last hour of the 36-hour run, you're just like trying not to pass out because the end is so quick. Oh, yeah, sometimes it's even faster than that. Sometimes, if Nart goes first, he'll be able to get 2 extra magic buff stacks on Taika before Curse procs for its final time, and it usually, just those 2 ticks of Curse will kill it by itself. So the train usually gets a single time, or the train usually gets a single turn off. Now that was actually one of the slower variants of that fight, but if you can even call it that. No, if you're noticing an FPS drop, that literally always happens here for some reason. I don't know why. It's just the maybe the terrain or something. But right now we're on our way to go fight the final barnacle of the game. There he is. This guy is scary, bro. So we're actually going to put some of that might that we took off of Eamon back on. And give Taika his final magic tile. Well, actually, he'll get one more, but it's neither here nor there. I don't know if I want to do that. And then we're going to healing elixir. Everybody top them all off, make sure everybody's in the correct stance, and cool, then we'll do it. Now, only Taika needs to live through this fight. It's not as serious as the others as far as like who has to live and who has to die. But as you can see here, if you're not really lucky, okay, so we should be fine. Nice. Boom. So everybody gets EXP. We're now level 18. And we can move on. Now we're going to go to Chiron, who is the final of the bosses that we need in order to be able to craft the shields that will make us immune to Ichibo and Brin's Devastate move. This guy is, if you were watching since the beginning, you saw me do Chiron, who was the guy in the desert, where you have to kill his arms before you can attack his head. Now, Chiron is basically the ice variant of that. He works the exact same way. And, but this guy's even easier, because Taika is so strong at this point that we're able to actually kill him way faster than we were able to kill the last one. So we're just going to run past everything at this point in the game. No more fighting enemies for EXP, none of that. As soon as we end that last Suvia phase, we just blaze through what we have left in the game. And then after this fight, we're going to warp back to Suvia, get those shields made. We're going to buy a couple more items just because this is a marathon. And then we'll leave town for the final time and try to finish the game out, finish it out strong. We're doing really, really well time-wise. I'm super, super happy with that. I'm going to save just to be safe because that is how it is be sometimes. Last time I got really greedy. And I died in the marathon. Now this guy, you have to make sure that you don't get overly greedy with Taika. So we're gonna be able to fire breath right away. Taika will have enough for curse. Okay, we'll have to check how much damage we end up doing. Oh, he didn't get haste. This is a shame. So we're going to mainly use Amon to provide damage. If nobody needs heals. Okay, we're going to do it like this. Oh, we didn't get an energize. That sucks. So we're going to try to haste Taika here. And we're going to skip our turn with Amon. We don't want to actually, until Taika has 4 charges, we don't want to, so we're healing elixir here. We don't want to end the fight, or kill the second hand. Let's do it on her. There we go. He's stunned, so hopefully this kills. Nice. Oh no, we had to wait with Taika anyways. It's okay. So we should do more than enough damage that it doesn't even matter that Amon's stunned here. Especially with these huge magic focus stacks we're about to get out of Nart. Look how much damage this is about to do. It's so stupid. This character is busted, bro. And that right there is Neuron. So you can see, as long as you make sure that you have the proper Amory on Taika, that fight is a breeze. But if you go into that phase without enough to cast Curse, you're usually going to die. So you got to be really careful not to kill the hands too early. So here we go into back to the High Owl, who's going to use all the materials that we've gathered up so far to craft the Shields of Lys in order for us to be able to live through this next fight. And then after this next fight, it's just the final boss that's left. So we are closing in on the finish. Hopefully just 10, 15 minutes till we're done skis. We're moving and grooving, my friends. So she's going to give us those shields, and we're going to equip them right away. Sometimes I forget to equip them, and it it hurts bad. I forget to equip them, we go into the next fight, and we die. And just because it is a marathon, we're going to do an extra shop here just to make sure that we have all the restoratives we're going to end up needing. Come on, buddy. Oh yeah, we have so many. Oh my goodness. Usually I can make it to the end on like 8 or 9 healing items. We got like 20, and they're all the strongest one. Cool beans. We're ready to rock. So this next fight, Ichibo and Bryn, this is the second time we fight them. Obviously the first time was impossible to win. Well, this one is possible to win, and significantly easier. However, whether or not you can do it quickly is kind of random. Sometimes they, where is Nunart? Oops. Sometimes they kind of screw you by taking you get like a really poor turn order. And Ichibo can use Iron Skin right away which means you can't do any damage. You just have to sit there and wait for your turn and try not to die until it wears off. So Ichibo opens up with an ability that makes him and Bryn immune to damage for 3 turns. And then he slows you. So you just sit there waiting for what seems like an eternity before you can actually kill them. And you can't use Bond, because we're going to need the Bond for the final boss. So sometimes this fight is like a breeze and everything goes exactly how you want, just RNG-wise. And sometimes it's the complete opposite and you lose a minute or two, but we could actually afford to lose 32 minutes in this next fight and still be underestimate. So that feels pretty good. Now let's pray that we don't lose 30. I don't know how that would even be possible. But it would make me very sad. I'm gonna bait these goobers out real quick. Latest. Soft cushion, yeah, indeed. Okay, everybody's ready to rock. They're in the correct stance. We did save. So let's do it. Ichibo and Bryn, here we go. And after this fight, all that's left is the final boss, who is actually usually easier and faster than this fight. And before run goes 7 hours over estimate. Dude, if this run goes more than an hour over estimate, I'm quitting. Like, I'll be like, listen, dog, I'm out. Ooh, so we can actually get a free turn of curse. That's nice. First aid doesn't matter, so I guess we'll just, I guess I'll just cloak with. Oh, I should have tripwired, actually. That would have been ideal there. Adrenaline rush is fine. So they're going to, right off the bat, they open with that turn that makes him immune from damage for 3 turns. And then he uses Sloth, which slows all of us. So that's Devastate. And because we all have the talent, we're not going to die from it, which is dope. So we're going to use this opportunity now to heal people. So we can't really do anything else. We had to wait for the turn to wear off. Oh, wait, you know what? I think I accidentally missed an opportunity. That's okay. Yeah, I call a lot of people goobers, my guy. Hopefully we don't accidentally get another Iron Skin because I misplayed. We should get an Elemental Storm, in fact. Okay, cool. That's fine. She's expected to die. Contempt, huh? Okay, there's Iron Skin a second. Alright, cool. So now we're doing fine. We just got to keep everybody healed. And by everybody, I mean the most important person, who is Taika. Everybody else can die. We'll just use a list or raise them back up if they do end up passing out. Sloth is going to come out. Always does. Look how many buffs Taika has, dude. When he is able... Oh, you know what? I can actually... Yeah, that was a good idea. Because by killing myself, I get rid of the slow. Okay, cool. So now when Taika's turn comes up... Oh, no, he's not going to have enough... Oh, this is just going to be a terrible fight. Feels bad. Oh, oops. Because I switched him stances, he died. Because he had a DOT on him. Oh, no. So, you know what? It might actually be faster just to reload this fight at this point. Sometimes they really do go like this, and it's a huge pain. I misplayed like twice. I can say 2 turns that probably weren't done how they should have been. Okay, cool. At this point, we don't have any real threat of dying as long as Taika stays up. Okay, cool. So that is Ichibo and Bryn. Yeah, we're more than okay. We still have. Yeah, no, actually, I could still make it through the final boss without having done that extra shop, as far as I'm aware. We did lose 2 minutes, which feels bad, but it's okay. It's not the end of the world. Once the fight started to go south right off the bat, I should have, like, if it was going for a PB attempt, I would have just burned everybody's bond. But because it's a marathon, I figured I'll just go for a slower fight and guarantee that there's no risk in the next fight. Yeah, we'll do talents now. Immunity chance, he needs to have, and back again. She needs to have double turn. He needs to have, I don't know. I guess I'll give him strong resolve. And then we'll give him armor. We'll give her double turn, quick step. We don't want quick step. We want battle medic. Okay, brilliant. We'll give Taika 1 more magic tile. Cool beans. We're ready to rock. Throw the run. Yeah, no. We won't be throwing the run, don't worry. Let me see how many, just for curiosity. Oh yeah, we have more than enough. Usually we only need 3 or 4 potions in this final boss fight, and we still have like 11. Peg chimp, indeed. So this is actually one of my favorite areas in the whole game, where you fight the final boss here. Oops. I just like the way that it's designed, and the aesthetic is really cool. If you talk to these little, you see these little things that all have glowing lights. If you interact with them, it'll tell you like the answer to the puzzle ahead, but I actually, I know the answer to the puzzle because I've played the game before, thankfully, so. But this puzzle is my favorite in the whole entire game because it's really neat in the way that it works. I like the octagon shapes as well. They're pretty cool. So you run into here, you run back out, and now you have to hit these tiles in a specific order in order for the ground to move. And there we go. So that's the last and final puzzle in the whole game, and it's a easy one, thankfully. Juke those bad boys out, get them out of our way. And then we are going to heal by warping back. We're going to save. We're going to move on to the final boss. Oh, man, it has been a terrific marathon. I've been lurking quite a bit. I know you caught me lurking earlier today, Goobs. Been watching Knit and Smash and stuff like that, especially while I'm at work or watching my kid and whatnot. So it's been a great marathon. So it's a pleasure to be a part of it. I thank you guys for letting me run Earthlock, man. And hopefully this final boss we finish off super strong. Yeah, of course, man. You always know I got you. Anytime Gooby does a marathon, I try to at least submit a game or 2. Cool. So this area right here is home to the strongest and the most high EXP yielding enemies in the game. And whenever I didn't know that Pat was increased mobility, I didn't know that he had that functionality, I used to have to take a single fight in here. So it was like a mini boss fight right before the final boss. And it was right there. But we're actually fast enough to escape it now because we have the increased speed and the water doesn't slow us down enough. So that was actually the devs helping me out with that one. Everybody's where they need to be. Oh, we're all level 18. Oh, no. Okay, the 2 important people are 19, which is ideal. which makes me think that we can actually skip that section as a Suvia grind, just like I thought. I'm gonna have to test that out, man. Sub 3 could be done with a few of these new strats I'm finding. That would be ideal. The Purple Fairy Boy, thanks so much, man. That's a thing. I really appreciate the compliment. It's been a pleasure to come here and do this for you guys, so I'm glad you're enjoying it. And if you guys are interested in Earthlock the game, man, it goes on sale all the time. It's on PS4, PC, Xbox One, Switch. Usually, like, I'm talking like every other week, it's on sale on one of those consoles. You can get it for less than 15 bucks. And there's a lot of stuff you can do that's obviously not shown in the speedrun. So if it does interest you, I welcome you guys to check it out. Okay, that's actually super ideal. We don't actually want to heal because we don't want to run the risk that anybody gets hasted, because what Valver Ichibo will stun anybody who gets haste. Once he's in Cocoon, though, we're safe to go. So now we just need to rest with Taika. While he's in Cocoon mode, you can't do any damage to him or you will die. But what we're going to do is you can actually still apply DOTs. We need Eamon to not die. So we're going to do a big curse with Taika. Just going to do a crap ton of damage here. First aid drop for a good heal. Good gouge. As you can see, just tons of damage coming out. Almost dead already. Actually, wow, this might be the fastest TG ever. There it is, time. Sorry about that. That is definitely a gold split. That's about as fast as that fight can go, my friends. We saved a whole minute. Sorry, Gooby, I didn't give you much warning, but that is time. We're looking at a 3:15:20 on my side. I'm sure that I probably didn't give you enough time on your end. But we're not done yet. We do have to do the Hollow Knight incentive, which we will do as soon as we're done with this. But yeah, wow. That was an excellent run. Only 3 minutes and 20 seconds behind the world record. I am, the first marathon run I did took almost, it was like 3:45. So it's really nice to see that this came together real smooth, real nice. Definitely pleased with that. So yeah, thank you guys so much for kicking it and watching. We did meet a donation incentive, so that'll only take a couple of minutes. I'll load a save that'll show you guys the optional super boss. Now he is he's something for sure, but he usually goes by pretty quick. You just can't. You have to like every other fight in the game, prop Taika up the best you can. But as soon as I have the ability, oh, I can do it now actually. We're gonna quit. Right there at the end, we stop time on the final hit of the final boss. But there is some really neat scenes you can catch if you want to watch the end of the game. It's basically like everybody goes home and then there's like a celebration for you, and the Frog Boy does a cool little dance, so that's always fun to see as well. But now the prerequisites for the Hollow Knight are you got to travel the world and acquire these 4 scepters. I can actually do it all and the fight in like 10 minutes tops, or like 15 minutes total. But for marathon purposes, I figured I would make a save file so that we could just immediately go do the fight. You guys wouldn't have to catch all that. So we're only 18. We're at the same level we were at the end of the last fight, Valver Ichibo. And now we're going to do the Hollow Knight. So the Hollow Knight is, real quickly, he is exactly what he sounds like. Kind of a shout out to the Hollow Knight indie game. And you can tell. Yeah, I'm so sorry, Gooby. I'm so sorry, dude. But you can actually tell that it had that inspiration. And he is he's considered a titan, like Chiron and Neuron. So there's no talents that make you do increased damage to them. There's nothing you can do to make this fight any easier besides get a little lucky, first of all, and hail Taika. So that's a pretty bad start right off the bat. I'm trying to figure out how I want to do this. We'll first aid drop, Adrenaline Rush. I think that would be ideal. Make sure to ban me. Don't ban me, bro. Oh, that's actually super favorable. Taika got haste as well. Ooh, boy. We need Eamon to live as well, so he's important for at least a little bit of it. That's what we'll do. Fine, that's fine. We're actually gonna have to just use healing elixirs. We got more than enough, so. As long as Taika stays alive, this fight is done skis. There you go, ladies and gentlemen, that's the Hollow Knight. It's a close one, it always comes down to the wire, but that is the hardest boss in the game. And the optional boss at that. He gives you a really strong talent called On the Brink that increases your percentage of damage you do based on how low your HP is. Really good talent, but in the speedrun we can't make much use of it because of the amount of time it takes to meet the requirements. But ladies and gentlemen, that has been Earthlock. It has been a pleasure. Thank you so much, Gooby, everybody, for having me. It was an honor to be able to finish off this marathon. But my name is Professor Palmer, and that's been it. Gooby, I'm sure you have some parting words, so feel free to take it away, my guy.
Yeah, thank you. First off, just thank you so much, Professor Palmer, for coming by, doing this great finisher with Earthlock. It's a great game. And for final announcements, I just want to say thank you so much, everyone who came by and donated. We actually have a donation right now from Roma 45100 from the French restream. It says red, getting that red hair dye color. For those of you not in the loop, one of the French restreamers will be dyeing their hair color if we met our goal, and we did. So he's gonna dye it a nice red for us.
Dang, that's ballsy.
Yeah, it is.
Shout outs to the guy.
He's a great guy. He messaged me like, please, nothing too extravagant. I have work tomorrow. Like, yeah, he's a good guy. But for announcements, I just want to say thank you everyone who donated, who came by, who watched, who ran, who helped put this together. You're all wonderful. It's a great event. And I just have two announcements that we will have an online-only event at Mid-Spring Speed Fling. That will be May 15th through 17th. So you can feel free to go on speedrun.com, check that out. We will post some more about that in the Discord. And then we also have an on-site event, Midwest Speed Fest 2019. That will be in August. I will go and post links to both of those. So here is for the August event. And we will have the spring event, which I did have. Can post that. Once speedrun.com will be cooperative with me. There we go. We have another donation. There's another last-minute donation.
Hey, right, brilliant.
Let's get that in. $5 from Helix. It says, super proud of everyone. Thanks for making this marathon amazing. Thank you so much. And so yeah, that was the marathon. Just really great. I hope you all are interested in our upcoming events. And we are going to go raid someone now. We are going to go raid Diamond Crafter A, who was running earlier in this marathon. He did New Super Mario Brothers any %.
Dope.
So yeah, I just want to thank you all so much for donating the Carbon Fund. There we go, got that raid. All right. go enjoy Diamond Crafter A's stream. And thank you for coming by our neck of the woods this marathon. Peace out, everyone.
Pleasure, man. Thanks for having me.